McLaren 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
You two met, I mean, since we last saw each other, then you two have done Strictly. And, But the fact that and there's quite an age gap.
51 years.
51.
And yet... I'm his granny.
But the fact you clearly get on really well and you've stayed in touch and you've developed a real friendship.
We really do. I mean, we live 5 minutes from each other. We speak most days and, you know, Angela had this amazing campaign with Let's Dance and obviously I was very, very much supporting that. And when you just get on like a house on fire, we just do. We get each other. We have great banter. And like you said, there's 51 years between us, but we feel like we've known each other for 51 years.
You have a particular interest in getting dance back into schools, don't you? I mean, your own experience of this, because your dad is a professional footballer, and you actually won a place, didn't you, into the football academy? It was sort of expected that you were going to be a footballer.
Yes, it was. I was expected to be a football player naturally because I was the eldest son, and you know Southampton wanted to sign me in the Premier League, and they still are. No, I chose to be a dancer, and it was because my dad and mum sent me to dance classes because I was very hyperactive as a kid. I was pretending to kick a football all the time. They sent me to my next door neighbour's dance school, and the class was called Tango Tots. I somehow ended up being a dancer and had to tell my Geordie dad when I was 12 years old that I wanted to be a dancer.
How did that go down?
It went fine. It's not like the film, not like the film, but it's very, 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 very supportive. And obviously the brother ended up being the football player.
But you're very keen to get dance back into schools, aren't you? Tell me why.
I'm so keen because for kids that can't afford it, why not just give them the opportunity to learn to dance? We live in a world today where we're on the phones, we're on TikTok, kids are learning to dance anyway, so why not regulate it and let them learn it in school for free?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. on this beautiful Friday, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show. Here on GB News, we're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. We've got some breaking news on today's show. Parliament is to be recalled for an emergency debate, passing a law on the future of British steel. And there's less than 24 hours to save the industry from collapse after its Chinese owners refused to pay for their own coal. And that meant the British government had to buy £7 million worth of coal from Japan to keep the Scunthorpe furnaces burning. Selling coal to Newcastle used to be a national joke. Now it's Britain's energy policy. We'll be live from Scunthorpe as it battles for survival and speaking to experts from the steel industry throughout today's show. And Emmanuel Macron has fired the first shots in a new Brexit fishing war with the European Union. The French president is threatening to block any Ukraine defence pact between France and the UK unless French trawlers can continue to plunder British waters. I'll be joined by Ben Habib, who claims Britain is being stitched up like a kipper. Yesterday, West Yorkshire Police barred white Brits from jobs. Today, Thames Valley Police are forcing cops to have white privilege training sessions. How did this woke madness take a hold of our cops? And is it time to kick it all out? I'll be joined on today's show by a top copper. Now, that is a great show. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Working Class Britain. Britain PLC has been thrown a dramatic lifeline, a last-minute lifeline. British Steel, a key strategic industry. Britain will be the only nation in the G20 to not be able to make its own steel. We have Scunthorpe as the last remaining blast furnace, after Port Talbot was closed in January this year. That left us in the precarious position of relying on a Chinese company that clearly doesn't care about British steel. They refuse to pay for coal. So the British government has had to pay for coal to come into our nation to keep the furnaces going. A law expected to be passed tomorrow, putting British steel back into public ownership. I think that's great for Britain. I think it's great for the working class community. If you truly care about the north-south divide, you should take this as a huge victory. Credit where it's due, and that's going to be the topic throughout today's conversation. What do you make of this? Is it a great idea? Do you remember the days when Britain used to build ships? We ruled the waves, ruled Britannia, and that was all funded on steel. The Industrial Revolution, the coal mines industry is so important. Today, British industry has been thrown a lifeline. As you can probably tell, I'm in a blooming good mood. Now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock, the top story, well, it's that breaking news that Parliament is being recalled tomorrow for an emergency debate on the future of British Steel's Scunthorpe plant. That comes as the government signals it may seize control to keep the furnaces burning. A senior source says ministers are now looking to take control of the company after its Chinese owner declared the site no longer financially sustainable. Talks to save the plant, home to 2,700 jobs, have reached a critical point, with raw material supplies running dangerously low and production just days from halting. MPs had already left for their Easter break, but will now return early to debate urgent legislation aimed at keeping the UK's last operational blast furnaces alive. Gingy, which took over British Steel in 2020, says it's been losing around £700,000 every single day. And also breaking in the last half hour or so, Michael Gove is heading for the House of Lords, topping a list of politicians named in Rishi Sunak's resignation honours. The former cabinet minister, who served under 4 prime ministers, joins a wave of people rewarded in Sunak's exit from the political stage. Former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and ex-Foreign Secretary James Cleverly have received knighthoods. Peerages also go to former Chief Whip Simon Hart and ex-Scottish Secretary Sir Alistair Jack. That is despite Jack's involvement in a row over betting on the election date, which he denies breached any rules. In other news, US markets have opened slightly lower today as global stocks continue to wobble amid escalating trade tensions triggered by Donald Trump's sweeping tariff hikes. China has now raised import taxes on US goods to 125%, retaliating against a 145% levy imposed by Washington. President Xi has urged the EU to join China in standing up to what he calls US bullying, warning that there are no winners in a tariff war. Meanwhile, the US dollar has fallen to a 3-year low, and Trump, breaking his silence on Truth Social, claimed the US is doing really well on the tariff policy, calling it very exciting for America and the world. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves, Chancellor here at home, says the UK is resolved to do everything it can to secure the best deal possible with the United States.
Well, we continue to engage with our counterparts in the United States, and of course we want to secure the best deal possible for British jobs and British industry, and we are absolutely continued and resolved to do everything we can. But at the same time, we also want to improve trading relations with other countries around the world.
A cannabis-smoking mother who drowned her young sons in the bath while in a psychotic state has been jailed for life with a minimum term of over 21 years. 47-year-old Cara Alexander was found guilty of drowning 2-year-old Elijah Thomas and 5-year-old Marley Thomas at their home in Dagenham in East London in December of 2022. Post-mortems on the boys found they had either been drowned or suffocated, but Alexander accepted at the trial she had placed them in the bath before they, she said, accidentally drowned. And Ukraine's allies have pledged £18 billion in new military support for Kyiv, with Britain announcing £450 million. It comes as UK's Defence Minister John Healey and his German counterpart Boris Pistorius are chairing today's defence summit in a bid to pile pressure on Russia's President Putin. Germany's defence minister told the meeting that peace in Ukraine appears out of reach in the immediate future, given Russia's continued aggression. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you for another look at the headlines in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Well, let's take a look at the markets for you this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.3117 and €1.1518. The price of gold, £2,459.54 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently standing at 7,961 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's return to the breaking news hot off the press that Parliament has been recalled for an emergency debate tomorrow on the future of British steel. Now, this will be only the 35th recall during a recess since 1948. Now, is this a massive victory for the working classes of Britain and for Britain plc? Well, speaking earlier on, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says it's important that we take action to protect British steel.
We recognise the importance both to Scunthorpe for the jobs and community there, but also for our national economy to maintain those capacity to make steel in Britain.
And meanwhile, Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, has been urging the government to designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset.
Well, I'm really worried about those steel jobs. Because of the tariffs that President Trump has imposed, which are really harsh, it's really hurting British steel and British steel workers. And what Liberal Democrats are saying, the government should designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset. And what does that mean? That means we would make sure that whether it's our energy sector with our wind turbines, whether it's our the new leisure park in Bedfordshire, or whether it's any aspect of our industry, defence industry, for example, that they use British steel.
Well, let's bring in GB News' political editor Chris Hope now. Chris, welcome to the show. Chris on Downing Street there for us. Chris, it's refreshing, is it not, to see politics being put to one side today? Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, Ed Davey, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, the Conservative Party, all united, seemingly, in its backing for nationalising British steel, making it a key strategic interest. Just 24 hours to save the plant at Scunthorpe after the Chinese refused to pay for their own coal. Chris, tell us dramatically, Parliament being recalled tomorrow, 11 a.m. What's expected to happen?
That's right. It's highly rare that we have Parliament recalled on a Saturday. There's been 34 times the Commons has been recalled since 1947, 33 times the House of Lords. Both houses recalled tomorrow from 11 a.m. to debate what the government is calling a steel industry special measures bill. Now, don't go too far down the line of nationalisation, because there's a statement we just got from 10 Downing Street moments ago. It says here, the PM has been clear the government will always act in the national interest. It says all actions we take are in the name of British industry, it says here, British jobs and for British workers, almost waving that Brexit flag here, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. He goes on, tomorrow Parliament will be recalled to debate the Steel Industry Special Measures Bill. The bill provides the government with the power to direct steel companies in England, which we will use to protect the Scunthorpe site. It enables the UK government to preserve capability and ensure public safety. It also ensures all options remain viable for the future of the plant and the livelihood it supports. And just finally, it says there, this is a statement from number 10 Downing Street behind me, we've been negotiating with British Steel's owners, the Chinese owners, in good faith ever since coming to office. We've always been clear there is a bright future for steel in the UK. All options remain on the table. So what this means is, or what it appears to mean, and what it appears to mean, Martin, is simply this, that the government's going to take control of the plant in Scunthorpe, but not fully nationalise it. So what we were wondering in the past hour was, will this mean we have to find more money to pay to nationalise British Steel? It appears that's not happening yet. What's happening is the government is giving itself powers to protect the site, keep it running, buy the necessary supplies to keep the plant running while it works out what to do next. This is a kind of halfway house, I think, reading this, before full nationalisation.
Chris, it is a desperate interim measure, but one that's necessary. Only 24 hours of coal left at the plant. The Chinese owners, Jingyi, refused to even pay for their own coal. That precipitated the government had to import 55,000 tonnes from Japan, 7 million quid's worth. Chris, it used to be a national parody to say we're selling coal to Newcastle. Now it's the government policy. We're shipping coal from Asia to keep our furnaces going. That's not sustainable. So there has to be some kind of strategic industry aspect to this. But surely that's best for Britain. If we're talking about rearming, if we're talking about upping our military strength, if we're talking even about things like building roller coasters in Bedford, at new theme parks, it would make common sense to have our own strategic steel industry.
I think the need to have our own industry, as you say there, has increased since those tariffs imposed on globally by Donald Trump since he became the president, most recently on Liberation Day, a week last Wednesday, 10% baseline tariffs and much more on steel. I think the UK government is now looking at where the wind's blowing and thinking we need to have our own suppliers in this country, not least for our big defence spending coming up. And he, of course, the PM earlier this week, didn't he? He was at that opening or the announcement of this new fun amusement attraction, a fun fair ride there the Universal are doing in Bedford. He wants to make sure the rides there are made from British Steel almost as a symbol of the importance of this industry. But the heart of this are two things. It draws to me the conflict between this net zero target, which Ed Miliband's pushing, of course, to get to net zero by 2050 and all these interim measures by 2030 and 2035. How does that square with stopping producing coal, but as you say, buying coal from overseas to ensure we have a domestic steel business? That is interesting, and those two things appear to be in conflict, and that is fascinating. I think that is where we are with this government. It is trying to preserve the need to have our own supplies of steel in this country, while at the same time trying to pursue what some would say is a controversial goal to try and wean us off net carbon emitting fuels. And also the second point is this: yet again we have a policy which has been championed by the Reform UK Party, adopted by the Labour Party. It happened, didn't it, over the axing of the aid budget, spending money on defence. That policy was almost identical to what Reform had in their manifesto last July. Well, yet again we have weeks and weeks of Reform saying time to nationalise British Steel, and lo and behold, the government's got there. The government, of course, can't just say things, got to act. They can only do things with reason, and that's where they're doing it. But fascinating, I think, that the Labour Party is adopting elements pushed for by Reform UK, because that is the sweet spot, I think, in British politics, where Reform UK are fighting hard for those Red Wall Labour MP votes in the Red Wall, in rather large parts of industrial England. That is where they know Labour has got to win those seats to hold the next election.
Chris Hope, I think you've absolutely nailed it. And isn't it interesting about net zero? We're importing coal from Japan, but Ed Miliband decided not to open the coking coal mine at Whitehaven, Cumbria, just down the road. That's a conversation we'll have later in the show. Chris Hope, Downing Street, excellent as ever. Thank you, my friend. Well, joining me now is John Elliott, the founder of eBack Limited. They were the only manufacturer of washing machines in the UK. And John Elliott, 50 years of dedicated inputs to British manufacturing using a lot of steel. John Elliott, what do you make about this notion that we should have our own strategic national British steel industry?
We should have our own strategic policy on manufacturing. never mind steel, we shouldn't be manufacturing everything that we consume or more things that we consume. We should think about replacing imports rather than being obsessed about exports. We're missing the simple tricks. But you're absolutely right. This government doesn't have joined-up thinking. You know, we've got to accept we've got to use fossil fuels for the near future. And so why not use our own? It's just so much common sense.
You know, no, John, it's interesting, is it not? This is the conversation that's being had globally now after those Trump tariffs. America is having a huge conversation about we don't make anything anymore. Britain, we've offshored everything. We sold our souls to China over the 50 years you've been in business, John. You've seen it change. Do you think it's time to go back to building in Britain, manufacturing in Britain, first?
We've got to absolutely, it's a no-brainer. Produce more food as well. You know, it's just so obvious. I can't believe it that economists, these clever people, can't see it. And rather than, we shouldn't be paranoid about producing jobs, we should focus on output. That's what we need. I mean, we keep giving ourselves pay rises and increasing wages without increasing output is fool's gold. We've got to focus much more on output. We've got to produce more within the country.
And John, I don't know about how it makes you feel, but I remember I'm from Nottinghamshire. My dad was down the pit 47 years. I remember a time when everyone was in full employment, when we made stuff, when we had proud working class communities. You know, a part of this makes my heart swell. There could be a glimmer of hope that we might see some of that coming back.
The good news, we can do it again. That's the good news. It's just the government stopping us. We need better people running the country. That's our biggest problem, is we just don't have very good people running the country. They're trying. They're getting better, they're saying the right things, but they don't quite mean them.
But, John, as far as today goes, a small victory, you think? It's a key big strategic... Victory. Yeah?
And I would rather have nationalisation than foreign owners. Foreign owners only come to the UK to make money out of us. They don't come here for our benefit, they come here for their benefit. We've got to look at internal investment, not inward investment.
I think you're absolutely right. I really, really do think you're absolutely right, because we've offshored so much. Everything is made abroad. And also, you know, we've got used, John Elliott, to a whole culture of buying things when it breaks down, chuck it in the bin, buy another one, consumerism, shallow, build something well and build it once and make it last.
Absolutely right. But there again, look, the Chinese make good products. Don't run them down. They're not the fault. We're the stupid people for not doing it here. We've got to do it here. We've got to make more things in the UK. We've got to get those people fiddling the benefits to start working in real jobs, making things that you and I consume, the boring stuff, not IT, not AI, the shirt on your back, the food on the table. That's the things we all need, and that's the things we can deliver if we only got a decent government to sort things out.
Well, I'll tell you what, John Elliott, I don't know if you ever consider getting involved in politics. You probably can't be bothered with it, but you make a damn fine parliamentarian, in my opinion.
Too complicated for me. It's difficult telling lies all the time, isn't it?
John Elliott, absolute legend, mate. Absolute legend. I love your enthusiasm. Thanks for all you've done in manufacturing. Keep up the good work. Let's get you back on the show soon. Brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, let's continue that conversation now about net zero and Britain's position in the world climate change sphere, because I'm joined by the director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford. Andrew, no doubt you'll be thinking today, close but no cigar, because, of course, the direction of travel of the British steel industry is to get rid of smelting, go back to arc furnaces. That's not strong enough, and we can't compete financially with China. But this, as a key strategic industry funded by the taxpayer, what's your thoughts?
I think it is a key strategic industry. Blast furnaces produce grades of steel that you can't get out of an arc furnace. So I think there is a real argument here for keeping Scunthorpe open. I mean, it doesn't come naturally to me. You know, I'm a free marketeer, but yeah, I can see that there's a case to be made here. I think there is a real risk, though, that, you know, all those losses that the Chinese have been carrying for the last however many years are now going to transfer to the taxpayer. And we still have Ed Miliband in charge of energy policy. And yeah, as you quite rightly pointed out, he did close down that proposed coking coal mine in Cumbria. And, you know, he is going to be carrying on with our energy policy. So if we ever want to see Scunthorpe making money again, one of the things we need to do is to get its energy costs down. So let's get those local mines open again. And yes, brilliant. That would bring more jobs, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be good for the economy in the state it's in? But yeah, I mean, I think we should be grateful that Scunthorpe is hopefully going to stay open. I would hope that the opposition parties are going to demand a price for this. And I think the price should be that they should say Ed Miliband has to go. I mean, you cannot. He's caused this problem, hasn't he? I mean, by closing down that coal mine, and by leading us down this net zero garden path. Let's say, look, OK, we will back whatever it is you want to do, if it's nationalisation or whatever. But Miliband has to go, and they say to Keir Starmer, we need somebody sensible running energy policy.
Andrew, it's only fair to point out that the previous Conservative regime were pretty hooked on net zero too. Boris Johnson seemed to be something of a Greta Thunberg with a mop top. So I think we can agree that the whole political establishment has got a bit hooked on net zero, but now reality is biting. Are we actually seeing net zero is making us perhaps net poorer? And it just seems astonishing that we're importing 7 million quid's worth of coal from Japan, pumping it around on container ships fueled by dirty diesel fuel, when we've got perfectly viable coal, better quality coal, about 50 miles down the road.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is a complete no-brainer, but this is true of so many things that we are. We could make them locally, but we don't. So, yeah, you're quite right to point out that the Conservatives have led us most of the way down the garden path. But Labour are carrying on and are making it worse. Let us be grateful that Reform have turned the argument round. The Conservatives now seem to have turned on net zero as well. So there is hope, but we just need to do something about Ed Miliband, because he can make things much worse before the next election. And we've got a few years to go, haven't we?
Yeah, and at this rate, the Reform Party will have no policies left. That's the Director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the show. Now, are the French enabling small boat crossings? Well, I think we know the answer to that is mais oui. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Welcome back. 3:26 is your time on this beautiful Friday afternoon, and I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, GB News has obtained an audio recording that seemingly confirms that the French authorities are giving illegal immigrants life jackets. Now, in doing that, it raises obvious and serious questions about whether they are now enabling small boat crossings. Well, joining me now is GB News' Homeland Security Editor, Mark White, the man who broke this exclusive. Mark, last week, the French were simply watching by as illegals paddled their way to boats. Now they're shipping, they're getting life jackets shipped back to them. Whose side are these guys on?
Well, certainly this is an issue that our audience know only too well, because they've been following what they see as really quite a frustrating approach by the French authorities for years, Martin, because we know that it is the policy of the French government to escort these small boats once they're in the water over to UK waters. Now, they say they do that because it's all about ensuring that they're not a hazard to the busy shipping lanes. But the fact is, they're escorted over to UK waters. Now it seems they're being given life jackets as well. And the questions, as you say, is whether this could be seen as enabling this illegal trade across the Channel by people that think that actually they are going to get some kind of protection from the French authorities for their journey across to the UK. We've obtained audio of radio transmissions between the border force and a French warship in which, when you listen to it, it's clear that the French are providing these migrants with life jackets. Just have a listen to this.
We can arrange to return your life jacket once embarked. Can you confirm how many persons are on board, Heather? 34, sir. Thank you very much for life jackets. We will put us here our river, so you will be able to give them the life jacket after embarkment. French warship Typhoon. Yeah, that's all understood. We'll, once everyone's on board, we'll return the life jacket either via our rib or via your rib. Can you confirm, are all the life jackets yours? Over. All the life jackets are ours. It's also life jackets we had kept before with other border forces. Yeah, that's all understood. I'll make contact once we've completed the rescue to return your life jacket.
So, Martin, just reiterating for our radio audience who didn't have the benefit of the subtitles there, it was a conversation from the Border Force vessel Typhoon to that French warship, asking them to confirm how many life jackets that the migrants were wearing were theirs, and if they could confirm that, and they said yes, the life jackets are theirs. Now, what the French, I'm sure, would say is that these are dangerous crossings, and that if they intervene to try to assist one of these small boats and they see that there are individuals not wearing life jackets, they're duty bound to provide those migrants with life jackets. But of course, the counter argument to that is the British government has made goes to an awful lot of effort to try to convince people from all around the world that don't come to the UK via small boats. It is highly dangerous and you are being exploited. Well, the people smugglers could argue, as they try to tout for business, that actually you will get the protection of the authorities in France to ensure that you've got the safest of crossings now.
Forget border force, this is a border farce. I wonder who pays for those life jackets. Is it part of the £500 million we give the French every year? Mark White, another great exclusive. Thank you very, very much for joining us on today's show. Now, it's been an entire month, since Birmingham's bin strikes begun, with now expected 17,000 tonnes of rubbish lining the streets of Birmingham. But could the end be in sight of the strike, or perhaps hope? Well, Jack Carson, our West Midlands reporter, joins us now live from Birmingham. Jack, you've been up to your armpits in bin bags all week and there's no end in sight.
Well, that seems to be the case. Angela Rayner came to Birmingham yesterday, met with council leaders, members of the volunteers and members of the bin service who were trying to clear some of the rubbish, urging Unite to accept the deal on the table. She says a much improved offer from the council, but Unite coming out yesterday saying that the council should stop vilifying their workers and look at the deal that they've put forward. They say that's a KC approved deal. They say at the moment they've only received partial protections on pay for a few, and there are concerns for their members with mortgages and rents about money in the future. Of course, the bins strikes having a real impact. We're here in Kitts Green. We've been in different parts of Birmingham all week, Martin, as you'll know, and we're seeing the same picture. Bin bags like this strewing the streets. You can see here as well some marks where rats have got into the bin bags. We've been speaking to a nurse today who was concerned around vermin, concerned for her elderly patients around vermin and the impact it could have. We were at one of the mobile waste collection services where people were able to bring their rubbish that hasn't been collected in weeks. We caught up with them to find out how they feel about the bin strikes in its month-long dispute, but also with this deal on the table, whether they think these bin workers should accept that. Here's what they told us.
It's a massive inconvenience, but I do support them 100%.
The bin workers should accept the offer because obviously it's going really big now. I mean, it's not the small issue now.
End it and get on with it. That's what I say. They have to accept it, the strike. That's what I believe.
No, I keep rejecting to get what they need. It's not a case of what they want. It's a case of making cuts to their wages. It is, and nobody can afford to have cuts to their wages at the moment.
What I've seen throughout these weeks, it's disgusting. Why can't they accept what's given? I mean, everybody else don't get a pay rise, for what they do, and they have.
I mean, Unite say that it is about protecting the pay they've got. It's not about a pay rise, it's about protecting the pay that they've got. But while they are trying to sort out this deal, the guard of honour of bin bags, Martin, means that this is the state for many residents, could be possibly for the weeks to come.
Absolutely appalling sights, and the politicians and the unions fighting like rats in a sack. What a metaphor. Jack Carson, beautiful. No doubt we'll see you again next week. And keep how you go. Now then, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including should British troops be sent to Ukraine? Well, a Major General with 43 years of experience in the army joins me next for his thoughts. But first, here's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 33 minutes past 3. The top story, Nigel Farage has renewed his call for the nationalisation of British steel. That's ahead of tomorrow's emergency recall of Parliament to debate the future of its Scunthorpe plant. The Reform UK leader said he and party chairman Richard Tice visited the site this week and witnessed, they said, how desperate the situation is. Mr Farage says China has no interest in keeping the steelworks open, insisting nationalisation is now the only option to save the plant and protect thousands of jobs. He urged the government to take back control of British Steel, retain and refurbish 2 blast furnaces, and also acquire Liberty Steel Rotherham for its electric arc furnaces as part of a long-term plan. In politics, Michael Gove is heading for the House of Lords, topping a list of politicians named in Rishi Sunak's resignation honours. The former cabinet minister, who served under 4 prime ministers, joins a wave of people rewarded in Sunak's exit from political stage. Former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and ex-Foreign Secretary James Cleverly have also received knighthoods. Peerages, meanwhile, go to former Chief Whip Simon Hart and ex-Scottish Secretary Sir Alistair Jack. That's despite Jack's involvement in a row over betting on the election date, which he denies breached any rules. US markets have opened slightly lower today as global stocks continue to wobble amid escalating trade tensions, triggered, of course, by Donald Trump's sweeping tariff hikes. China has now raised import taxes on US goods to 125%, retaliating against a 145% levy imposed by Washington. President Xi has now urged the EU to join China in standing up to what he called US bullying, warning that there are no winners in a tariff war. Meanwhile, the US dollar has fallen to a 3-year low, and Trump, breaking his silence on Truth Social, claimed the US is doing really well on the tariff policy, calling it a very exciting time for America and the world. And here's a story I was surprised to bring you. Salmon on anxiety medication could be taking life a little too lightly, according to a new study that says the fish are getting more reckless in polluted waterways. Researchers found that traces of clobazam, a drug used to treat anxiety in humans, are ending up in rivers and changing how salmon behave. Instead of sticking with their shoals, the medicated fish wandered off solo and even leapt straight into hydroelectric plants without hesitation. The study, published in Science, saw salmon exposed to the same level of drug found in contaminated water. Those are the latest headlines. A full roundup of all the top stories at 4 o'clock. Now, though, we'll take a short break before we head back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. The latest AI travel news from GBnews.com reports congestion in Surrey on the M25 anti-clockwise near Junction 13 due to a collision. All lanes are closed, causing further delays. In Lancashire, drivers on the M61 northbound between Junction 8 and Junction 9 should expect 10-minute delays. Similar conditions prevail in Rotherham on the M1 northbound between Junction 30 and Junction 31, with 20-minute delays. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Can you find love in your twilight years? That's what we're asking this morning. Broadcaster Ryan Mark Parsons and former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe join us now. Good to see you both this morning. Anne, let's start with you. Is 70 too old to date, do you think?
70 isn't too old for anything. Everybody ages at different rates, both mentally, physically, in the sorts of things they like. When you say to me, is 80 too late to, is 70, well, we might even say 80, it's too late to find love. The answer is just look around you. Lots of people have. But let me say right away, no, that's not an invitation. I've absolutely no ambitions in that area at all.
Ryan Mark, what do you make of it? Do we need to stop putting a bar on ageing and dating?
No, I don't think we should. I think once you get to such an old age, you really should be looking for love internally. I mean, you should self-love. I just don't see the point at 70 years old to be searching for love at that point. I think you should go on a holiday somewhere. I think you should find love with the sunshine and a cocktail, perhaps, instead of looking for a man or a woman. I think at what point do you decide that you know, love is not going to come around knocking on your door? And I think probably at the age of 70, that is when you should decide it's time to give up. I'm 24, living in London. I know how incredibly hard it is to find love. I don't know how anyone who has wrinkles and grey hair at the age of 70, over someone like me, could perhaps find love. I just don't think it's possible. I think it's a nice idea, but I think it's not feasible. And also, I don't think there's any point at that age.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 24 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News on this wonderful Friday afternoon. Now, Britain is considering deploying troops to Ukraine for 5 years under plans being discussed by allies. Under this plan, the Franco-British-led Reassurance Force, would offer to help protect Ukraine's skies and seas, as well, of course, as the ground. We can now speak with the retired British Army officer, Major General Tim Cross. Tim, an absolute pleasure to have your esteemed company. A lot of people getting in touch with GB News have great concerns about this. It has all the hallmarks of a forever war. And of course, Vladimir Putin has been saying any provocation will be taken with a dim light. You're an expert, I'm not. What's your take?
Well, I'm not sure I'm an expert, but I've had a lot of experience of these things. I mean, there is no doubt that the government and other governments are serious about wanting to support Ukraine and do all they can to enable Ukraine to survive, in inverted commas. Nonetheless, it is also so, as you said, that Putin has made it clear that he would not allow NATO troops in. And I think we're a long way from seeing any sort of ceasefire that would bring this force about. But let's look on the positive side. Let's say that maybe this happens in the not too distant future. We have a number of questions, I think, that flow from what's being said. First of all, what do we mean by a reassurance force? I've been involved in peacekeeping operations around the world, classic UN blueberry peacekeeping operations. They do not, and they're not allowed to use force. They report back to the UN Security Council, and their deployments have to be endorsed every 6 months or so. I've also been involved in a NATO deployments of what was called peace enforcement. In other words, the rules of engagement allowed us to use force, if necessary, to make sure that the warring parties who'd signed up to whatever agreement it was, like Dayton or the other agreements in places like Kosovo, that they would, not fight, and they would agree to keep the terms of that agreement. And if necessary, we were allowed to use force. And then there's the size and shape of that force. Ukraine is a very big place. And how long will we be there? Now, Northern Ireland started when I was at Sandhurst being commissioned back in 1970. It didn't end till the year I left the British Army in 2007, 37 years later. And at one stage, we had 27,000 British soldiers in Northern Ireland. Kosovo, which I served in, we had a force, a K4 under General Mike Jackson of 50,000. And what we found in Iraq in 2003 is that we did not have anywhere near, we or the Americans did not have anywhere near sufficient force to put down what effectively became a counterinsurgency. So the size and shape of the force and the amount of time you're prepared to be there is really important. And I'm not surprised that nobody's coming out with firm answers to those questions, but they must be the questions that people are asking themselves in these conferences and around the table.
And the second question, I mean, you are an expert. That was fascinating. Thank you very much. Major General Tim Cross, the next point is quite simple. Where is this army? We've got the smallest army since the Napoleonic time. The type of forces on a rotational basis could be as many as 100,000. We don't even have that amount now.
No, we don't. And, we have suffered, and I regret the fact that the military is a much reduced force than when I was serving. But looking at how would this deployment happen? First of all, it would have to have some sort of command and control arrangement. The Americans have made it clear that they're not prepared to provide that. So I suspect one of the headquarters that's being looked at here is the headquarters of the 8th Rapid Reaction Corps, ARC, which is based in the UK, commanded by a British general. So we could put the ARC there and a relatively small force of British military alongside on the basis that other nations will make up the numbers, be it France, be it people like Poland or the Baltic states or whatever. But you do need to remember that for every 10,000 people you deploy, after a relatively short period of time, you've got 10,000 who've come home and 10,000 who are preparing to go. So for every 10,000, you're talking about 30,000. And again, it depends where they are and what their job is. Out of interest, I was at the memorial service of General Mike Jackson, actually, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, at the Academy at Sandhurst. And most people, of course, would not been in the Academy Chapel. It's a wonderful, wonderful chapel. There are a number of pillars, and on each side of the pillars, there is marble on which is inscribed the hat badge and then the names of young officers who passed through Sandhurst prior to World War I, with all the names listed of those killed during World War I. And I can tell you there's an awful lot of them. And on the walls are all the campaigns we've been involved with. And those campaigns include the Balkans, for example, which started in about 2012, 1992, and it's still going on. There's a dash in the year. And then there's Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. So, you know, in the context of my earlier conversation, but in the context of your question too, I think it'd be good actually for the Prime Minister and for David Lammy and others, just spend half an hour in the Academy Chapel looking at those walls, remembering that it'll be a long deployment. A lot of those guys who deploy, some of them won't come home, and the size and shape of the force and its ability to defend itself and sustain a fight if a fight becomes necessary is absolutely crucial. It is no point going in there thinking it's all going to be sweetness and light. If you remember, when we deployed to Afghanistan in 2006, it was publicly declared that we hope a shot would not be fired. The end result was a lot of people with dying and wounded and casualties and so forth over the next years that we were deployed in Afghanistan. So, you know, this is a very serious business. I'm not against the deploying the British military. If we can come up with a good resolution in Ukraine, then, you know, hopefully we can do our best to help. But it is a serious business.
We have to leave it there. That was fascinating and moving stuff. Thank you very, very much for sharing that with us. That's the retired British Army officer, Major General Tim Cross. Thank you very much. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then who can blame you? It's lovely outside, but here's the forecast anyhow for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you've got holiday plans for Iberia, unfortunately there are spells of rain around at the moment, and that will continue through the weekend. For Greece, however, it's mostly bright but with a keen breeze, and Italy's faring well on Saturday with plenty of sunny skies. A few showers dotted about through the Mediterranean, and then for Spain, as well as Portugal, Madeira and the Canary Islands, spells of rain and heavy showers are expected to continue through the weekend, staying sunny in Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Well, the fine sunny weather couldn't last forever, and as we go into this weekend, we are going to see a bit of a change with some showery rain and also a bit more cloud around as well. Currently though, for the time being, still heavily under the influence of high pressure across much of the country. There is a front towards the far north that's bringing a bit more cloud, some outbreaks of rain that will continue as we go overnight, but most places ending the day and going through the night with largely clear skies, a very settled picture. As a result, there could be a few pockets of mist and fog, particularly across some parts of eastern England. And with clear skies, we are going to see temperatures taking a little bit of a dip. Perhaps not quite as chilly as some recent nights, but nonetheless, a touch of frost is quite possible in some prone rural spots. So then we start the day tomorrow on quite a bright note across many areas. Still some cloud across the far north of Scotland, Shetland in particular, having a bit of a wet start to the day. Otherwise, a generally fine story to start off with. Bit more cloud though, starting to push into western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, and towards the southwest of England. Here there's going to be some cloud and some showery rain feeding in as we go through the morning. Elsewhere though, lots of bright sunny weather. However, as we go through the day, the showery rain in the southwest is going to become a bit more widespread. Some of these showers could be a little bit on the heavy side as they push across parts of, well, initially southwest England and Wales, but then later on feeding into other parts of the UK as well. Further east is actually staying dry, plenty of sunshine on offer here, and temperatures are similarly warm to recent days, low 20s, but further west with the showery rain pushing in, we are going to see our temperatures dipping. Later on, like I said, we do see more showery rain feeding its way in. Eastern parts are staying dry for now, but overnight, most places likely to see a bit of wet weather at times. Sunday's not looking like a total washout, but definitely cloudier than of late, and a few showers around. More changeable weather to come next week. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're
proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 on this beautiful Friday afternoon with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, police officers at one of Britain's biggest forces are being taught that they have white privilege. Thames Valley has introduced equity training, which covers topics including white privilege plus microaggressions. And, of course, yesterday, West Yorkshire Police were barring white British people from jobs. What on earth is going on? Well, let's bring in the Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner, Lisa Townsend. Lisa, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. From West Yorkshire to Thames Valley, they seem to be absolutely consumed with some kind of woke mind virus. What's going on in our police forces?
Good afternoon, Martin. Good to be on again. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And it's different police forces. And I don't think actually it's fair to blame any individual force for this or any individual sort of chief constable or officers, because I think this is something that's actually coming from the top of policing. And we've seen it now quite a few years. I mean, critical race theory, something we've been talking about relatively recent history. Actually, it's been around for about 40 years. And I think this, what we're seeing now, actually, is this kind of coming to the fore. But we do see it right from the top. You know, the National Police Chiefs Council, Gavin Stevens, who is currently chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, was my chief constable in Surrey, you know, and he is surrounded by people. It's not fair to say it's just Gavin either. He's surrounded by people who believe this. And we are seeing it, unfortunately, right across our public institutions. And let's be honest, Martin, a lot of our private ones as well. But I do worry about it when it starts to take a hold in policing.
What's causing it? Is it some kind of guilt complex for historical wrongdoings? I mean, where does this come from?
I think it's a lot of that, and I think it is linked to the wider issues that you and I, Martin, have spoken about before, whether that's around, you know, supporting trans men and women within the force, supporting gay people, which of course we should be doing. And I do think a lot of this comes from a history that policing has of being, quite frankly, homophobic and racist, right, in the past. I think we can absolutely see that.
Okay, so Lisa, is this a kind of self-flagellating overcorrection for how things used to be, and now the pendulum's gone too far?
It is, and I've called it an overcorrection in the past. I've called policing's relationship with Stonewall an overcorrection, because I think that's exactly what it is. I do think it's a massive piece of self-flagellation. And when you look at the people who are the main proponents of it, you know, we're not looking at those officers or those minority groups who've actually been sort of most hurt in the past. Actually, a lot of it is coming from, quite frankly, middle-class white men who seem to think that the answer to all of policing's woes is to go through this self-flagellation process. And unfortunately, it serves absolutely nobody, least of all the communities we are there to protect.
Well, I mean, hopefully, if we have a few people like you, more like you in charge, Lisa Townsend, this might reach its natural course. We might get back to policing the streets, not policing tweets, stop trying to reprogram people for being racist, homophobic and sexist, and actually get back to basics quickly if we could. Do you think there's any hope that might happen?
I do. I really, really do. I mean, I look at my chief constable in Surrey, who's actually come from Thames Valley. Tim DeMayer and I have been very, very clear. And actually, it was in my manifesto last year, which I won on, which was to go to a back to basics policing, start taking offenders off the street, getting coppers out there doing what they absolutely do best. And that's what we're doing in Surrey. The Police and Crime Commissioner, Matthew Barber in Thames Valley, you know, there's the whole reason he ordered the review was because he thinks that this thing needs looking at as well. So there are some brilliant people out there doing amazing work.
Thank you. We have to leave it there. Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure. Now, Thames Valley Police spokesman responded and said this: "We strive to be fair and courageous in how we serve and our colleagues and the community." But coming up next, working class Britain has been thrown a lifeline as Parliament to be recalled for an emergency debate on potentially renationalising British Steel. Plus, Ben Habib's in the studio next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Well, the fine sunny weather couldn't last forever, and as we go into this weekend, we are going to see a bit of a change with some showery rain and also a bit more cloud around as well. Currently though, for the time being, still heavily under the influence of high pressure across much of the country. There is a front towards the far north that's bringing a bit more cloud, some outbreaks of rain that will continue as we go overnight, but most places ending the day and going through the night with largely clear skies, a very settled picture. As a result, there could be a few pockets of mist and fog, particularly across some parts of eastern England. And with clear skies, we are going to see temperatures taking a little bit of a dip. Perhaps not quite as chilly as some recent nights, but nonetheless, a touch of frost is quite possible in some prone rural spots. So then we start the day tomorrow on quite a bright note across many areas. Still some cloud across the far north of Scotland, Shetland in particular, having a bit of a wet start to the day. Otherwise, a generally fine story to start off with. A bit more cloud though, starting to push into western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, and towards the southwest of England. Here there's going to be some cloud and some showery rain feeding in as we go through the morning. Elsewhere though, lots of bright sunny weather. However, as we go through the day, the showery rain in the southwest is going to become a bit more widespread. Some of these showers could be a little bit on the heavy side as they push across parts of, well, initially southwest England and Wales, but then later on feeding into other parts of the UK as well. Further east is actually staying dry, plenty of sunshine on offer here, and temperatures are similarly warm to recent days, low 20s, but further west with the showery rain pushing in, we are going to see our temperatures dipping. Later on, like I said, we do see more showery rain feeding its way in. Eastern parts are staying dry for now, but overnight, most places likely to see a bit of wet weather at times. Sunday's not looking like a total washout, but definitely cloudier than of late, and a few showers around. More changeable weather to come next week. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In West Yorkshire, the M62 is queuing eastbound after a collision at junction 22 for Rishworth Moor. In Warwickshire, the M40 northbound is partly blocked after a collision between junction 13 at Bishop's Tackbrook and junction 14 for Leamington. In Surrey, there are long delays on the M25. That's partly blocked clockwise near junction 13 for Staines. That's after a collision and a lorry fire, with long queues there back towards junction 11 at Chertsey.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with Skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon. It's 4 p.m. on this glorious Friday, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, working class Britain has been thrown a dramatic late lifeline as Parliament is to be recalled tomorrow for an emergency debate on the future of British steel. There's less than 24 hours to save the industry from collapse after its Chinese owners refused to pay for its own coal. And that meant the British government has had to buy 7 million quid's worth of coal from Japan to keep the Scunthorpe furnaces burning. Selling coal to Newcastle used to be a national joke, and now it's Britain's energy policy. We'll be live from Scunthorpe as it battles for survival. And that man, Emmanuel Macron, has fired the first shot in a new Brexit fishing war with the European Union. The French president is threatening to block any Ukraine defence pacts between France and the UK unless French trawlers can continue to plunder British waters, perhaps taking even more of our fish. I'll be joined by Ben Habib, who claims Britain has been stitched up like a kipper. And GB News has obtained an astonishing radio message that proves France is giving life jackets to illegal Channel immigrants. In it, the French demand that the return of their kit. And Border Force, or is it Border Farce, agrees to ship them back. Is it time to freeze funds to the French? Ben Habib sat here saying that's unbelievable. I just heard it for the first time about the fact they're giving, life jackets to the French are giving life jackets to illegal immigrants, and then the British Border Farce should it be, are ferrying them back. You couldn't make it up, and we're paying £500 million a year for this. Last week we were seeing illegal immigrants up to their ankles in water while the gendarmes looked on. I've had deeper baths. The French just looked on and did nothing to stop it. And today, this leaked radio communication that GB News obtained shows that they're asking for life jackets back to give to the illegal immigrants. What message does that send out? Is that a deterrent? Or actually, is it a pull factor? And talking of which, later in this hour, I'll reveal the astonishing figures which prove Britain's minimum wage is drawing more immigrants towards the UK, the second highest on the entire continent after Luxembourg, who wants to live there, and that is drawing more and more people towards the UK. Is workers' rights now another magnetic pull towards Britain, just like those free life jackets? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 4 o'clock. The top story. Parliament will be recalled on Saturday to debate emergency legislation aimed at saving British Steel's Scunthorpe plant from imminent closure. Downing Street says the new steel industry bill will give ministers powers to protect the site, which employs 2,700 people, and ensure that vital raw materials can keep production going, at least in the short term. The move stops short, though, of nationalisation for now, but Number 10 insists all options remain on the table, with further powers potentially coming after Easter. Chinese owner Jinjiai says the blast furnaces are no longer financially sustainable, losing £700,000 a day. Saturday's recall, only the 35th since 1948, will see both the Commons and the Lords sit as the UK faces losing its last producer of higher-grade virgin steel. Michael Gove is heading for the House of Lords, topping a list of politicians named in Rishi Sunak's resignation honours. The former cabinet minister, who served under 4 prime ministers, joins a wave of people rewarded in Sunak's exit from the political stage. Former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and ex-Foreign Secretary James Cleverly have also received knighthoods. And peerages go to former Chief Whip Simon Hart and ex-Scottish Secretary Sir Alistair Jack. That's despite Jack's involvement in a row over betting on the election date, which he denies breached any rules. In the US, markets have opened slightly lower today as global stocks continue to wobble amid escalating trade tensions triggered by Donald Trump's sweeping global tariff hikes. China has now raised import taxes on US goods to 125%, retaliating against a 145% levy imposed by Washington. President Xi has now urged the EU to join China in standing up to what he called US bullying, warning that there are no winners in a tariff war. Meanwhile, the US dollar has fallen to a 3-year low, and Trump has broken his silence on his platform Truth Social, claiming the US is doing really well on the tariff policy, calling it a very exciting time for America. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves says the UK is resolved to do everything it can to secure the best possible deal with the United States.
Well, we continue to engage with our counterparts in the United States and, of course, we want to secure the best deal possible for British jobs and British industry, and we are absolutely continued and resolved to do everything we can. But at the same time, we also want to improve trading relations with other countries around the world.
In other news, a man who plotted an ISIS-inspired terror attack on a Birmingham mosque has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 16 years. Jason Savage was convicted after jurors saw footage of him carrying out reconnaissance near an Islamic bookstore. The court heard the 35-year-old had researched police and military sites, adapted a kitchen knife and messaged an undercover officer about his plans, calling himself a lone wolf. The judge had said he was ready and willing to carry out the deadly attack and was motivated by extremist ideology. And the UK could be in for the hottest day of the year so far today, with temperatures set to soar to 24 degrees in some parts of the south and southeast. To claim the title, today needs to be higher than the current high of 23.7 recorded in Hampshire earlier this month. But while the sun's out, so are the warnings. Fire crews are urging caution, with wildfire risks climbing fast after weeks of low rainfall. In Northern Ireland alone, more than 200 wildfires have broken out in recent days, many thought to be deliberate. Meanwhile, the London Fire Brigade is urging people to ditch the barbecues. Those are the latest headlines. A full roundup in around half an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Now let's return to that dramatic breaking news now that Parliament has been recalled for an emergency debate on the future of British steel. Now this will be the 35th recall during a recess since 1948, a rare event. But is this a huge victory for the British working classes? Well, let's bring in now GB News' political editor Chris Hope, who joins us from Downing Street. Chris, a huge intervention and a timely one that's well needed because Scunthorpe running out of coal. In fact, its Chinese owners refused to even pay for its own coal. That meant the British government had to ship in 55,000 tonnes from Japan's 7.2 million quid. Chris Hope, it used to be a national joke of selling coal to Newcastle. Now it's our energy policy. We need some common sense. Tell us about tomorrow's debate.
That's right, Martin. So tomorrow, for a very rare moment in British political history, on a Saturday, MPs and peers are being recalled. Now, they are debating a new legislation called the Steel Industry Special Measures Bill. What that does is it's not a full nationalisation of this company up in Scunthorpe with its steel furnaces. It gives the government here power to direct steel companies in England, by which it really means Scunthorpe. It allows the UK government to preserve the capacity and the capability to ensure public safety and ensure that essentially the UK government is taking over the running of the steel furnaces in Scunthorpe from the Chinese owners. Now, I understand from senior government sources that the business there was within a day or 2 days of having to turn off those furnaces. Now, we all know with steel making, you've got to keep them going. If you turn them off, that's the end of the steel furnace when they go cold. That meant the government couldn't wait until April the 22nd, Easter Tuesday, a week on Tuesday, when MPs and peers returned to Parliament. They had to do it now, and hence there's quite a lot of shaking up and jiggery-pokery going along right now in the building behind me, with diaries, plus in Parliament, plus with police on the door, plus with catering staff, trying to get the wheels in motion to get Parliament sitting on a Saturday. Highly, highly irregular, but the stakes here are very, very high. The government knows it can't let go our last blast furnace. We'll be the only G7 country without any domestic steel-making capability. The need to do that has come after Donald Trump's Liberation Day. He imposed those 10% baseline tariffs across the globe, but much more for steel makers. And of course, the UK, the US and China have their own battle, don't they, about steel, about tariffs at the moment. We now recognise as a country that having our own steel-making manufacturing is part of our national infrastructure. Really important to look after, protect it, and that's why there's good news for those 3,500 jobs up in Scunthorpe this weekend. But we're falling short of a full nationalisation. That will cost money, the money of which this government currently may not have.
Yeah, kind of half-fat measure, but there's a lot of fat heads in this Chinese company. It's astonishing that the British government is having to step in, and that means the British taxpayer, Chris Hope, 7.2 million quid for one shipment to keep this furnace ticking over because the Chinese refuse to do that. Surely there's got to be some consequences of that tomorrow. They've got to take action. We can't be held hostage like this. The British taxpayer paying for this to be kept burning. Thank you very, very much, Chris Hope, for joining us. A dramatic day in politics and in British industry. Let's get straight there now to Scunthorpe and join our reporter Anna Riley. Anna, welcome to the show. A lifeline has been thrown to Scunthorpe, a town that would have been getting on for 3,000 jobs. What's the reaction on the ground? They must be breathing a sigh of relief.
Yes, Martin. Well, steel is at the heart of this town. I'm in the centre of Scunthorpe now, and even on this shopping district I'm on, it's called the Foundry. Scunthorpe has had steel here for 160 years. Generations of people work at the factory, and it means a lot to the town. I've been speaking to people here. They've said it had become a ghost town if Scunthorpe was to lose its steelworks. Not just the impact on those 3,500 workers and their families, but the knock-on impact on the economy, even down to the local cafes and shops that the steelworkers come and get their lunch from. It'd be a huge impact for the town. And I've been speaking to people here, and I've spoken to actually a current steelworker at the moment, Rooney Bulmer. He's only been in the job for 3 months. He's 20 years old, and this is what he had to make of the Parliament being recalled tomorrow and the future of steelworks in the town.
Very unsettling, to be honest, because it could risk my job, of course, as well, and could be made redundant any time. So it's just nerve-wracking, to be honest. We don't know when we could be let go, and we're just in one of them situations where we've got to turn in every day and just wait until there's an announcement, haven't we?
And this is 3 months into the role. You're just new into the industry.
Exactly. So I can't really see a future at the moment in my career, so I want to look elsewhere, but I want to stick at my job because I really enjoy it, and obviously it's what runs this town as well. It's what everyone in this town. I think if you ask anybody on this road, they know somebody who's worked at the steelworks, and my dad's worked there, my granddad has worked there. Do you know what I mean? And it's what runs this town, to be honest. And in terms of actual steel production itself, we need it for the country. I think especially what's going on between America as well, with all the tariffs and stuff like that, we need our materials. And especially if Keir Starmer has any plans of making weapons, which he wants to, we need that steel, and definitely to be made in our country as well.
Rooney Bulmer there stressing the importance of steel to Scunthorpe and to the nation. It's not known, of course, what the cost would be of nationalisation. We know that the government offered £500,000 to the Jingyi Group, the Chinese owners of British Steel, that was rejected. It's been said that around £1 billion might be needed from the government, but we'll see. All eyes tomorrow will be on Westminster.
Thank you, Anna Riley. You know, it's so beautiful to see people like Rooney there. You know, we need the entire country to be full of people like that. We need British boys, British girls doing British jobs, making British steel, making stuff, keeping this country alive. And Southport, just like many working class communities, once the crucible, the lifeblood was steel, shipbuilding, coal mines. Here's a picture of my dad, 47 years down the pit. You know, people had full employment. They were proud of their community. Every job below the ground was like 4 above the ground. The paper shop, the car maker, everybody had a full employment. That's what this is about. It's about much, much more than just keeping steel going. It's about keeping the lifeblood of our economy going. Anna Riley, I'll let you go. As you can tell, I'm very, very excited about this potential lifeline being thrown. As I said, here's my old man, look down Cockgrave Pit, keeping things going, keeping the country. This is the generation that built Britain again back after the war. No, we've lost all this. You know, this steel plant now, we're shoveling coal into it over the next weekend that we're importing from Japan. 55,000 tonnes of stuff, 7.2 million quid, by the way, paid for by you, the British taxpayer. Why aren't we mining our own coal? There's a coal mine down the road at Whitehaven. Guess who decided to close that? Ed Miliband. That is our national energy policy. We're importing coal from Japan when there's coal just down the road. I can't get my head around that. Here's a man who might be able to help. Ben Habib joins me in the studio. Ben, I want to get your take first on this what seems like an interim measure. We were getting quite excited earlier on that this would be a nationalisation of British Steel brought back into public ownership as a key strategic industry. Instead, it seems that we're simply paying to shovel money into a Chinese furnace.
Yeah, this is the problem. I mean, there are lots of problems with the story, but the one you've just hit on is a particular problem with the privatisation of industries of strategic importance. As long as they're making money, those monies go into the privatised shareholders' pockets. The minute they hit the skids, it's the taxpayer that steps in. So they're always going to be making money at our cost. And for that reason, it's inappropriate, particularly a business like steel, which is cyclical at the same time as being of strategic importance. It's inappropriate for it to be in the private sector. And can I just say, if it's inappropriate to be in the private sector, it's doubly inappropriate that it's owned by the Chinese. Yeah. Apart from anything else, they have a conflict of interest because they produce cheaper steel in China. It wouldn't suit the Chinese for Scunthorpe to be a success. They'd actually rather see it shut down so that we have to buy Chinese steel, which is at the heart of some of Trump's complaints about the way China is dumping steel on the United States of America. But the other point which you touched on, which I think is so pertinent, is that the steel industry and coal mining go hand in hand. You can't have a steel industry unless you have coke, because coke gets to the temperature required in order to smelt steel. And we've set aside our domestic energy creation in the pursuit of net zero, this ideological stupidity, what I call the emasculation of the British economy on the altar of ideology, in order now, first of all, to import steel from China, which is made in coke-fired steel refineries there, and now to import, ridiculously, coal from Japan. And we're doing the same, I'll digress, but we're doing the same with liquefied natural gas. We shut down our gas fields in the North Sea, and we're importing liquefied natural gas from the United States of America. We have lost control, on the altar of various ideologies, we've lost control of the United Kingdom's economy, our strategic interests, and what is for the betterment of the British people. And this comes back to, obviously, a much bigger thing, which is this government's got to stop making policies based on the liberal global order and start thinking first and foremost, and exclusively, frankly, of the British people. A bit like Trump is thinking of for the Americans at the moment.
Now, no doubt the Labour Party would say we need clean air, and they are looking to make our steel primarily driven by electric arc furnaces, which burn cleaner, but of course...
But that's only recycled steel. They can't actually produce steel. And if they're going to rattle the sabre, as they have done repeatedly with Russia, wanting to put troops on the ground in Ukraine, allowing Zelensky to fire Storm Shadow missiles into Russian territory for the first time. If they're going to do all that, they have two obligations to the British people at least. One, to make sure that we're a wealthy enough nation to be able to be making those decisions. And secondly, that we're armed up and capable to back them up. If you haven't got a steel industry, as that brilliant young man said, we can't make the armaments. So if Starmer's going to be belligerent on the international, muscular on the international stage, he better make sure we've got the wealth and the wherewithal to back it up domestically.
OK, Ben Habib, as I've got you here, can I also bring back a little bit of the European Union fishing wars? Because that's back in the news cycle again, because there, of course, is a UK-France reassurance pact, a defence pact planned for Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron, the president, has said that that might not happen unless France gets not only continued access to British fishing waters, but increased access to British fishing waters. Does this say to you, does it prove that we never actually Brexited?
Well, we didn't Brexit for a whole host of reasons that I can go through. As you know, that is my view, that we never left the EU. We've left Northern Ireland behind, and we left our fishing waters behind. And you might recall, I'm sure you will recall, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson and others banging the drum for the fishing industry, making the argument for the 186 coastal constituencies in the UK, saying how they were going to be re-energised. And then when push came to shove, they sacrificed our fishing industry. And contrary to what Boris Johnson said, he lied in Parliament when he said, after we've done the trade and cooperation agreement, we will have the ability to negotiate our arrangements for fishing our waters on an annual basis. The deal that we signed with the EU, and viewers may not know this, but the deal that we signed with the EU did increase our take of our own fish from our waters up to June 2026. But there is no mechanism in that deal for us to take control of our waters from June 2026 onwards. The French, in particular, and the EU have a continued right to go on fishing our waters at that level. And if we wish to change it in our favour, they can take compensatory measures against us and they can cancel other parts of the trade and cooperation agreement. And we all know that our government hasn't got the guts to stand up to Europe.
If we wanted to stand up to them, the French could take retaliatory measures. They could, for example, choke the supply of nuclear power to us. But that would mean then a full-blown trade war. Is that something you would advocate?
Well, look, I mean, the other thing that's been lost, I think, in the whole Brexit debate since we apparently left is that we run a habitual £100 billion deficit with the European Union. A bit like Trump is irritated with the rest of the world for exploiting American largesse and running these massive deficits the US does with these other countries. We should be extremely concerned about the $100 billion a year that we are effectively losing to Europe. I don't just desire a trade war with the EU. We need a trade war with the EU. We need to be putting tariffs on German goods coming into this country, principally their cars, which is where the trade deficit exists. And they create the ability to force their product down our throat by an artificially weak currency, which is something that Trump cited in his need for tariffs, and also backdoor state subsidies to support their industries through cheap loans, etc., etc. We have allowed our fishing waters to be exploited. We have allowed our industry to be exploited. We've offshored our steel industry. We've allowed Northern Ireland to be left behind. We are not governed by people who are putting this country first. They don't even understand how to define this country. And I would say a key component of the definition of the United Kingdom is our fishing waters and the right to use them for the benefit of the British people.
OK, Ben Habib, we have to leave it there. You've had your Weetabix. Great to see you again, my friend. Thank you very, very much. Now, let's return to that breaking news that MPs are to urgently discuss the future of British steel. As earlier, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, had this to say.
We recognise the importance both to Scunthorpe for the jobs and community there, but also for our national economy to maintain those capacity to make steel in Britain.
And meanwhile, the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, has been urging the government to designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset.
Well, I'm really worried about those steel jobs because of the tariffs that President Trump has imposed, which are really harsh. It's really hurting British steel and British steel workers. And what Liberal Democrats are saying, the government should designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset. And what does that mean? That means we would make sure that whether it's our energy sector with our wind turbines, whether it's our the new leisure park in Bedfordshire, or whether it's any aspect of our industry, defence industry, for example, that they use British steel.
A novel idea, a wind turbine-powered blast furnace. Now, next, are the French enabling small boat crossings? That'd be a mais oui. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, British News Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, good back. Your time is 4:27 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News on this glorious Friday afternoon. Now, GB News has obtained an audio recording that seemingly confirms that the French authorities are giving illegal immigrants life jackets. Now, in doing that, it raises obvious and serious questions about whether they are now enabling small boat crossings. Well, joining me now is the man who got this scoop. It's GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, last week, the French were simply standing and watching as illegal immigrants were jumping on ships up to their ankles in water. Today, they're giving them free life jackets.
Well, there has been an awful lot of frustration, understandably, about the way in which French authorities intervene or don't intervene to try to stop these migrants making that dangerous and illegal crossing to UK waters. As you say, big controversy over why on earth they don't turn back the boats when they're in just 2 or 3 feet of water. Well, they are changing the rules now to try to make that happen, but it will be still some time before they actually get to the point where the officers are trained to be able to turn these boats back in shallow water safely. And all the while, not only are they escorting any boats that get into the water across the busy shipping lane to UK waters, they are now handing out life jackets to the migrants as well. And that raises, as you quite rightly say, points here as to whether what the French are actually doing, even though they say they might be doing it with safety in mind, it actually acts as a driver and an enabler for those people smugglers to be able to say to migrants who might be nervous about such a dangerous journey that don't worry, you'll be protected by the full might of the French government, who will see you safely across to UK waters. Take a listen to what we obtained, Martin, in terms of radio transmission between a Border Force vessel Typhoon and a French warship, confirming in this that the life jackets that have been given to a group of migrants are French life jackets.
We can arrange to return your life jackets once embarked. Can you confirm how many persons are on board, Heather? 34, sir. Thank you very much for life jackets. We will put us here our river, so you will be able to give them the life jackets after embarkment. French warship Typhoon, yeah, that's all understood. We'll, once everyone's on board, we'll return the life jackets either via our rib or via your rib. Can you confirm, are all the life jackets yours? Over. All the life jackets are ours. It's also life jackets we had kept before with other border forces. Yeah, that's all understood. I'll make contact once we've completed the rescue to return your life jackets.
Martin, this was the Border Force vessel Typhoon speaking to that French warship, and for just the aid of our radio listeners who didn't have the subtitles to be able to listen to what were quite difficult to hear conversations at times, it was confirmation from the French warship to the Border Force vessel Typhoon that the life jackets that the migrants were wearing were life jackets that the French provided to them. I should say the French provided the life jackets to the migrants, but it's very likely that they were funded from the £500 million that the UK government has given to France in recent years.
Mark White, you raise an excellent point. Who's paying for this? And there seems to be very little deterrent, and it has to be said that if word gets around on TikTok or wherever that you get a free life jacket and no one tries to stop you, is that a deterrent or is it a pull factor?
Well, that is an excellent point, because the British government spends considerable time and resource on messaging in countries like Vietnam and Iraq, and especially the Kurdish region of Iraq, to try to tell people, do not come on that long, arduous journey to try to get across the English Channel. It's very dangerous and you will be exploited. But here, of course, the people smugglers could argue that perhaps they are going to be assisted on that journey, that dangerous journey, by the French authorities.
Mark White, another excellent scoop, although it does make you feel sometimes like whacking your head on a desk. Mark White, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us on GB News. Now, there's loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including thousands of immigrants classified dead by Donald Trump as part of plans to stop them accessing benefits. He's just simply cut off their social security number so they can't work or claim benefits. Is that a bit too far? Or should we learn a lesson, perhaps, from that man, Donald Trump? But first, here's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 4:30. The top story, Nigel Farage has renewed his call to bring British steel into public ownership. That's ahead of tomorrow's emergency recall of Parliament to decide the future of its Scunthorpe plant. The Reform UK leader has said he and party chairman Richard Tice have seen how desperate the situation is during a visit to the site this week. Mr Farage claimed China has no interest in keeping the steelworks open and insisted nationalisation is now the only option to save the plant and protect thousands of jobs. He's calling on the government to take control and refurbish the remaining blast furnaces. Well, speaking earlier on the situation in Scunthorpe, Chancellor Rachel Reeves says all options are on the table.
We recognise the importance both to Scunthorpe for the jobs and community there, but also for our national economy to maintain those capacity to make steel in Britain.
And leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, wants the government to classify the steel industry as a national strategic asset.
Well, I'm really worried about those steel jobs because of the tariffs that President Trump has imposed, which are really harsh. It's really hurting British steel and British steel workers. And what Liberal Democrats are saying, the government should designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset. And what does that mean? That means we would make sure that whether it's our energy sector with our wind turbines, whether it's our the new leisure park in Bedfordshire, or whether it's any aspect of our industry, defence industry, for example, that they use British steel.
Michael Gove is heading to the House of Lords, topping a list of politicians named in Rishi Sunak's resignation honours. The former cabinet minister, who served under 4 prime ministers, joins a wave of people rewarded in Sunak's exit from the political stage. Among them, former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and ex-Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, who have both received knighthoods. And peerages go to former Chief Whip Simon Hart and ex-Scottish Secretary Sir Alistair Jack. That's despite Jack's involvement in a row over betting on the election date, which he denies breached any rules. An update now on the markets in the US, where they have opened slightly lower today as the global trade tensions have reignited, with Wall Street reacting to the latest escalation in Donald Trump's tariff war. China has now retaliated with a 125% import tax on American goods. That's after Donald Trump slapped a 145% levy on select Chinese imports, raising the stakes between the two nations. President Xi has called on the EU to stand with China against what he described as US bullying, warning that there are no winners in a tariff war. Mr Trump remains defiant, though, insisting the US is doing really well and that his tariff strategy is moving along quickly. But investor confidence has certainly taken a knock, the US dollar sinking to a 3-year low today. And salmon on anxiety medication, yes, you heard that right, could be taking life a little too lightly, according to a new study that says the fish are getting more reckless in polluted waterways. Researchers found that traces of clobazam, a drug used to treat anxiety in humans, are ending up in rivers and changing how salmon behave. Instead of sticking with their shoals, the medicated fish are wandering off solo and even leaping straight into hydroelectric plants without hesitation, poor things. The study published in Science saw salmon exposed to the same levels of the drug found in contaminated water. Scientists say the findings are a worrying sign of how human medication could be disrupting life beneath the waters. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Up next, though, let's take a look at those markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Well, let's take a look then at the markets as they stand just after 4:30. The pound will buy you $1.3048 and €1.1520. The price of gold, £2,459.54 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently at 7,961 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Staffordshire, the M6 northbound is partly blocked by a broken down van between junction 12 for the A5 and junction 13 for Stafford South. In Essex, the M11 northbound is partly blocked after a breakdown between junction 7A at Harlow North and junction 8 for Bishop's Stortford in the A120. In Surrey, the M25 anti-clockwise is partly blocked after a collision, and that's between junction 13 at Staines and junction 12, the turn-off for the M3.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Anna, let's have a look at this and how do we tackle the work of one of Britain's most infamous white supremacists?
Yes.
William Shakespeare.
Oh no. That William Shakespeare, yes.
Why is he being? Why are some people saying he's a white supremacist?
So this seems to mostly be based on some research that was carried out in 2022 by some academics that concluded that essentially promoting Shakespeare, as they said, benefits the ideology of white European supremacy, because the argument is that effectively you're saying that this kind of culture is superior to others. But, you know, I'm afraid most people who read Shakespeare will conclude that it is superior to most things that are written. And that's nothing to do with him being white. That's just to do with him being a genius. And it's very depressing seeing this, but also the amount of time, effort and presumably funding is spent on these sort of projects. It actually, I think, does a disservice to the youth, to young people, because by effectively erasing or trying to rewrite history, they then don't actually learn about the struggles people have gone through. So it's a bizarre one.
But I find it astonishing, because this is Birmingham University that's done this study, or an academic from Birmingham University. Birmingham should be celebrating everything great about the Midlands. It should be biased. If Birmingham and Stratford itself cannot celebrate what makes Stratford and Birmingham great, because celebrating a successful British writer from centuries ago reduces the visibility of writers from other countries that had nothing to do with us in the first place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good bag. It's 20 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News on this glorious Friday afternoon. Now, immigrants in the United States without legal status will be classified as dead as part of plans to stop them accessing benefits. And this comes as Donald Trump continues to clamp down on what he claims is an epidemic of illegal immigration. Well, we can now speak with the CEO and the Chief Marketing Strategist of Markets Rebellion, Mark Lopresti. Mark, welcome to the show. I've got to say, I'm used to stories about Donald Trump making me raise an eyebrow, but even this one, I think, is a bit fruity. Just basically declaring that 1 million immigrants are dead by cutting off all of their social security number, which means they can't work, which means they can't access any form of benefits. Presumably, he wants them, to just walk home?
Yeah, essentially, and great to be with you, Martin, and a good evening to everybody in the UK. That is the intent here, is to create a self-deportation effect. Now, this is about 6,000 migrants that came in using the CBP Custom Border Patrol app that was used primarily at the U.S.-Mexico border, designed for asylum seekers. And what the Trump team and the Trump administration is basically saying is that app was abused. It was not used just for asylum seekers. Bad people came in using that app. That app was a flagrant disregard for traditional ways that one could seek asylum or achieve even temporary legal immigration status in this country. And Martin, this is classic Trump. What he can't get done the traditional way, he gets done by whatever means necessary. And declaring these 6,000 people legally dead to take away their social security number is definitely in his greatest hits so far. So, yeah, it's very, very controversial. We expect it to face legal challenge, as many of his immigration policies and other policies have faced. He goes back and forth with federal courts in this country on a daily basis about different elements of the immigration policy changes. So we expect to see that continue.
Now, Mark, you'd expect this to hit some resistance because, of course, ostensibly, it would choke off access to any form of money for all of these people and would put them potentially in peril. They would starve. Anybody who employed them could go to jail because that would be illegal. They wouldn't even have any money to be able to help themselves get out of the country. Is it likely to get through? Or, as you say, is it classic Trump sending out the nuclear option, trying to frighten people into leaving before they're pushed?
Well, listen, he has used, as he's doing with the tariffs, different pieces of legislation and rules and laws in the United States in ways that many would argue were never intended to be used that way. And the thing that's interesting, Martin, that no one's really talking about here is the impact on the U.S. economy. We are already, it's been a very interesting week, a week and a half here in the United States on Wall Street. I'm a market strategist and economist, so feeling the pain of this roller coaster ride that we've been on, not only here in the U.S., has been nothing short of staggering. But the reality of it is 20% of the U.S. population is made up of Latinos. We have a huge percentage of GDP. If you looked at just the Latino population, which makes up the majority of the immigrants and the migrants that this is subject to, is $4.1 trillion in U.S. Latino GDP in 2023 alone, the fastest growing component of the American population and a very significant contributor to U.S. GDP. So to take a significant amount of that workforce out at a time that we're in a global trade war that does not have an immediate end in sight is also very controversial. And that's something that we're looking at, as opposed to saying, hey, let's find a way to get rid of the bad guys. I have no issue with getting rid of the bad guys. Plenty of bad people came in through the open border policies of the Biden-Harris administration, and I think that was atrocious. But there is a way to bring the folks that did properly use the system to get into this country and bring them into the economy in a meaningful way. And what we have seen over time is that particularly that Latino population contribute massively. Martin, they would be the 5th largest economy by GDP, just U.S. Latinos alone. That's remarkable. That's bigger than China. That's bigger than India, and that can't be ignored.
Mark Lepresti, that's absolutely fascinating. Thank you very, very much for joining us as the CEO of Markets Rebellion. Thank you very much. And I don't know about you, but whatever you say about Donald Trump, there's never a dull day. Thanks for joining us here on GB News. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, even though it's beautiful outside, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you've got holiday plans for Iberia, unfortunately there are spells of rain around at the moment and that will continue through the weekend. For Greece, however, it's mostly bright but with a keen breeze, and Italy's faring well on Saturday with plenty of sunny skies. A few showers dotted about through the Mediterranean, and then for Spain as well as Portugal, Madeira and the Canary Islands, spells of rain and heavy showers are expected to continue through the weekend, staying sunny in Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Well, the fine sunny weather couldn't last forever, and as we go into this weekend, we are going to see a bit of a change with some showery rain and also a bit more cloud around as well. Currently though, for the time being, still heavily under the influence of high pressure across much of the country. There is a front towards the far north that's bringing a bit more cloud, some outbreaks of rain that will continue as we go overnight, but most places ending the day and going through the night with largely clear skies, a very settled picture. As a result, there could be a few pockets of mist and fog, particularly across some parts of eastern England. And with clear skies, we are going to see temperatures taking a little bit of a dip. Perhaps not quite as chilly as some recent nights, but nonetheless, a touch of frost is quite possible in some prone rural spots. So then we start the day tomorrow on quite a bright note across many areas. Still some cloud across the far north of Scotland, Shetland in particular, having a bit of a wet start to the day. Otherwise, a generally fine story to start off with. bit more cloud, though, starting to push into western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, and towards the southwest of England. Here there's going to be some cloud and some showery rain feeding in as we go through the morning. Elsewhere, though, lots of bright sunny weather. However, as we go through the day, the showery rain in the southwest is going to become a bit more widespread. Some of these showers could be a little bit on the heavy side as they push across parts of, well, initially southwest England and Wales, but then later on feeding into other parts of the UK as well. Further east is actually staying dry, plenty of sunshine on offer here, and temperatures are similarly warm to recent days, low 20s. But further west, with the showery rain pushing in, we are going to see our temperatures dipping. Later on, like I said, we do see more showery rain feeding its way in. Eastern parts are staying dry for now, but overnight, most places likely to see a bit of wet weather at times. Sunday's not looking like a total washout, but definitely cloudier than of late, and a few showers around. More changeable weather to come next week. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Your time is 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, the Obamas have hit the headlines recently with rumours that the former US presidential couple are getting a divorce. Well, Michelle Obama has denied this, and though Barack Obama has attended a string of high-profile engagements without his missus. Now, it still begs the question, are the couple over in another way, as their political and cultural relevance seems to be at an all-time low. Well, I'm joined now by the dailymail.com columnist Maureen Callaghan, who wrote an excellent piece in today's paper and online about this. Maureen, you certainly think the writing is on the wall for the Obamas. Tell us why.
Well, the Obamas seem to be over, as you said, Martin, and thank you for having me, in more ways than one. In America, they have culturally become, a brand unto themselves with Netflix deals, podcasts, books, etc. Politically, however, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are done in the Democratic Party. There was a poll released very recently in America asking Dems and Dem-leaning independents who they saw as the head of the party. 4% named Barack Obama. Barack Obama, who could not get Kamala Harris over the finish line to defeat Trump. Barack Obama, who gave America Donald Trump and his first term. And so now what seems to be happening with Michelle, who has a new podcast, I think we're 2 or 3 episodes in, which is flopping hard. It's number maybe 34. By comparison, a TV sitcom star here just debuted hers at number 2, Amy Poehler. She's leaning into these rumors, as you said, she really actually hasn't denied them. She has not said, we're not getting a divorce. What she has said to the people who are listening to her podcast and putting money in her pockets is, people are mistaking my need for independence. I didn't go to Jimmy Carter's funeral because of my need to do my own thing, or the inauguration of President Trump because of my need to do my own thing. Well, if you're not getting a divorce, why not just say that instead of leaving all these breadcrumbs so that people will continue to pay attention to you?
And Maureen, also, who can forget that wedding anniversary photograph where they're on opposite sides of the table? That looked like a divorce photograph waiting to happen.
That picture, you could unpack that for days. You know, they're sitting at opposite ends of an extremely wide table. It's like the Panama Canal, it's so wide. And the other thing that this was a macro aggression, I believe, on Barack Obama's part. It was one of the most unflattering photos I have ever seen of Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
If that was not a message sent round the world, I don't know what was.
And it was fascinating to see, as you say, at Jimmy Carter's funeral, Barack Obama joking away, having fun, having a right royal time with Donald Trump, not with the missus.
Ooh, and the reports out of Michelle's camp that she was seething, that Barack dared to laugh with the enemy. You know, I mean, I have said it before. Americans have made Michelle Obama a very wealthy woman many times over. When she and Barack were in the White House, she got a daily tongue bath from the American media about what a beautiful, groundbreaking, revolutionary first lady she was that all Americans could be proud of, regardless of your politics. Ever since exiting the White House and landing in a soft mattress lined with cash from the likes of Ted Sarandos, etc., she has done nothing but gripe and complain. And this is why nobody's listening to her podcast.
Okay.
Nobody wants to hear it.
Maureen Callahan, deliciously catty. We have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for joining us on GB News. Superb. Now, working class Britain has been thrown a lifeline as Parliament is to be recalled for an emergency debate on renationalising British steel. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. First, here's your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Well, the fine sunny weather couldn't last forever, and as we go into this weekend, we are going to see a bit of a change with some showery rain and also a bit more cloud around as well. Currently though, for the time being, still heavily under the influence of high pressure across much of the country. There is a front towards the far north that's bringing a bit more cloud, some outbreaks of rain that will continue as we go overnight, but most places ending the day and going through the night with largely clear skies, a very settled picture. As a result, there could be a few pockets of mist and fog, particularly across some parts of eastern England. And with clear skies, we are going to see temperatures taking a little bit of a dip. Perhaps not quite as chilly as some recent nights, but nonetheless, a touch of frost is quite possible in some prone rural spots. So then we start the day tomorrow on quite a bright note across many areas. Still some cloud across the far north of Scotland, Shetland in particular, having a bit of a wet start to the day. Otherwise, a generally fine story to start off with. Bit more cloud though, starting to push into western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, and towards the southwest of England. Here there's going to be some cloud and some showery rain feeding in as we go through the morning. Elsewhere though, lots of bright sunny weather. However, as we go through the day, the showery rain in the southwest is going to become a bit more widespread. Some of these showers could be a little bit on the heavy side as they push across parts of, well, initially southwest England and Wales, but then later on feeding into other parts of the UK as well. Further east is actually staying dry, plenty of sunshine on offer here, and temperatures are similarly warm to recent days, low 20s, but further west with the showery rain pushing in, we are going to see our temperatures dipping. Later on, like I said, we do see more showery rain feeding its way in. Eastern parts are staying dry for now, but overnight, most places likely to see a bit of wet weather at times. Sunday's not looking like a total washout, but definitely cloudier than of late, and a few showers around. More changeable weather to come next week. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Oxfordshire, the M40 is partly blocked southbound after a collision at junction 6 for Watlington. In Bedfordshire, there are two lanes shut on the M1 northbound after a breakdown between junction 12 for Flitwick and junction 13 for Bedford and Milton Keynes South. And in Surrey, there are long delays on the M25, which is shut anti-clockwise at junction 13 for Staines and the A30. That's after a collision and a lorry fire with long delays of over an hour and a half.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. And let's cross now to Downing Street, where Sir Keir Starmer's just made a statement on the future of British steel.
Good afternoon. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest to protect British jobs and British workers. This afternoon, the future of British steel hangs in the balance. Jobs, investment, growth, our economic and national security are all on the line. I've been to Scunthorpe. I met the steel workers. I know how important steel is, not just to the region, but to the whole country. It's part of our national story, part of the pride and heritage of this nation. And I'll tell you this, it is essential for our future. Our plan for change means we need more steel, not less. So we will act with urgency. Now, we should be clear, this situation and our response is unique. While it is true that we're facing a new era of global instability, our concerns about this plant and negotiations to protect it have been running for years. This moment could have happened at any time, but it has happened now, and I will not stand by. There is no time to waste. So we are recalling Parliament tomorrow for a Saturday sitting. We will pass emergency legislation in one day to give the Business Secretary the powers to do everything possible to stop the closure of these blast furnaces. And as I have said, we will keep all options on the table. Our future is in our hands. This government will not sit back and just hope. We will act to secure Britain's future with British steel, made in Britain, in the national interest. Thank you. I'll now take some questions. Serena, please, first.
Yeah, you said the bill provides the government with the power to direct steel companies in England to protect the Scunthorpe site, without saying all options are on the table, which we've heard many times from ministers this week, without a clear indication of the future of British Steel. Can you tell us whether this is nationalisation or a precursor to nationalising British Steel? And if it's not that, why not?
Well, what we're doing tomorrow is passing legislation to take control of the plant and to preserve all viable options. And so that's the step that we will take tomorrow. It does mean all options are on the table, and it means all options remain viable. But the step we're taking tomorrow is the step of taking control, because it's necessary now to do that. Thank you, Chris, PA.
Thanks, Prime Minister. How much do you expect this to cost, and why wasn't it on the table for the Talbot Steelworks in Wales?
Well, we're taking the appropriate action tomorrow. Obviously, negotiations have been going on for some time, but now is the time to take this action, to take control of the plant. That means all options are on the table, all viable options are on the table, and obviously we'll take it forward from there. Thank you both very much.
Yeah, that was Sir Keir Starmer speaking at Downing Street a short while ago on the future of British Steel. Let's get some analysis now and bring in GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, welcome back. So Sir Keir Starmer there, keeping all viable options on the table, but light on detail, Chris, saying for now, stepping in to make sure that there is continuity, emergency legislation in place. But when asked, is this nationalisation or a move towards nationalisation? And if not, why not? He couldn't answer that question. So for now, the future is guaranteed, but we don't know precisely what that means.
Well, what it means is the future of Scunthorpe is now being secured by this government. They're going to take over effective control of supplying the blast furnaces with coking products, with coal, to ensure that they won't be turned off. You can't just turn off a steel plant. It must be kept going all the time, 24/7, 365 days a year. That's what's happening. What they're holding out for is the option on what's next. Clearly, from the answers there the PM gave to reporters, that nationalisation is an option, a viable option remains on the table. But the word viable might be so important, because what the government doesn't want to get on the do is on the hook for lots of losses there. But equally, he says very clearly in terms that it's essential, I think, to this government's policy of national renewal that we do have some form of steel making within the UK. He says that talks have been running for a year to try and ensure the future of the plant. They happen to have fallen apart just as MPs are away for this Easter recess, and that's why he's got to try and call back MPs tomorrow. He won't stand by, he says. There's no time to waste, he says, and that's why they're going to try and pass emergency legislation to give the UK government powers in England to control the future of steel plants. Our future is in our hands, he said. We will act to save British Steel in the national interest. What he's holding out the option for is maybe a US private equity company comes in with a guarantee of future government contracts for the defence plans, for any kind of further national infrastructure. That could be a solution, but of course the other option is the UK takes over the running for the nationalisation of British Steel. But we're not there yet. Tomorrow is about stopping the furnaces operating as soon as this weekend. I've been told by senior government sources, Martin, that we are literally facing those blast furnaces being turned off this weekend, and that's why MPs and peers are being recalled tomorrow to Parliament.
And Chris Hope, the interim measure that's been on the table today is an astonishing case of £7.2 million worth of coal paid for by the British taxpayer, 55,000 tonnes of the stuff being imported from Japan. And if that is going to go into these blast furnaces because the Chinese owner is simply refusing to pay for coal, then let's be honest about this. This means British taxpayers' money is being burned in those furnaces that are still owned by the Chinese. Now, that can't carry on. We can't carry on giving them coal so long as they own it. So all options on the table maybe could mean taking them back, seizing them back, putting them into British national control. A lot of detail to come out, but Keir Starmer there was clear. He was passionate about the fact it is essential for our future, British Steel, and we need more of it, not less.
And there'll be calls tomorrow in the Commons from Nigel Farage, notably the Reform UK leader. He'll be saying that it's time to renationalise, just nationalise British Steel, get on with it, stop talking about it, stop going halfway house, which is what the government's doing tomorrow. The government, though, is clearly holding out the hope that maybe a private sector investor comes in with a guarantee of many years of producing to avoid, frankly, probably this government paying more money out when money is so hard to find. There was some better news today, of course, with the economy increasing by 0.5% in February. That was unexpected, and that's great news for us all, frankly, if we could get the economy growing. But clearly they're worried about being on the hook here for a loss-making steel plant. But set against that, you've got these concerns about we do need steel production in the UK, not least with the spending planned on defence. But there's a contradiction at the heart of this, Martin, as you say. We are shutting down coal fields in this country. We do not produce domestic coal at all within the past, I think, year or so. That's been the last government, and this government has supported that policy. So why are we shipping in coal from overseas to keep going this steel furnace? There's a contradiction at the heart of this move towards net zero by 2050, interim measures by 2030, 2035, which are preventing and holding back, I think, British industry worried about soaring energy costs, and that's why we're shipping in cheaper coal from overseas.
Chris Hope, you're exactly right. Selling coal to Newcastle used to be the definition of absurdity. Now it's government policy. Thank you very much for joining us. Chris? Yep. Go on, mate.
Well, there's one further thing to say. What this shows to me, Martin, is where the politics is at with this government. They are battling for these red wall Labour MPs to stay with this party at the next general election. Reform UK is nibbling away in those seats, and that's why it's so important. We saw it last month by axing the aid budget in February and spending money on defence. That was Reform UK policy at the July general election. This again essentially is being supported by parties, but including Nigel Farage, to nationalise British Steel. In so many ways, as Labour government is turning its fire onto where Reform UK is, that is the battleground going into the next general election.
Nice metaphor to end the week on there, Chris Hope. Your blast furnace is always fired up. Best in the business. Chris Hope, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Let's get some more reaction now from the Managing Director of Reed Steel, that's Simon Boyd. Mr. Boyd, welcome to the show. I understand you are a customer of British Steel. You depend on the stuff. You use it in your products. You sell them around the world. What's your reaction to today's announcement?
Well, I think today's announcement should be welcomed. I mean, this is a very important step to, in my view, renationalising British Steel, bringing it back into public ownership where it belongs.
Now, the thing about that idea, many would agree, and interestingly, the political sphere seems to be pretty much united on this. Nigel Farage, Sir Keir Starmer, there seems to be a general agreement that that's the right thing to do. But, of course, we cannot compete in terms of the cost. Am I correct in saying that British steel costs about 200 times per tonne what Chinese steel does? And a lot of that, of course, is because perhaps of net zero. We're importing coal from Japan when a mine 50 miles down the road in Whitehaven, Ed Miliband is blocked.
Yes, the mind boggles at some of the things that are going on here. I mean, if you look at what's been happening to British manufacturing, we've been exporting our carbon emissions to China and India, where they go up into the one atmosphere we all share, and then we have to import them back, burning more carbon into the UK. It's absolute madness. I mean, the thing here that's so important is that steel making in this country, both virgin steel and electric arc furnaces that will be needed in the future, it means that this business needs a considerable investment to get it back where it belongs. And the only way we can deliver that is through public ownership.
Yeah, because Simon Boyd, the fact of the matter is, because of that uncompetitive nature, simply because of labour costs, of energy costs, of net zero restrictions, it won't be financially viable, and therefore to rely on the private sector to fund that seems to be a non-starter. Do you think we just have to accept that British Steel will be expensive, the taxpayer will need to come into that, but that is important to be sovereign, to not be reliant on overseas? Do you think that's a price worth paying?
Yes, I do, and I think most of the British people would take that view. But, you know, there is a silver lining at the end here. This is a 10 to 15-year investment, and at the end of that period, this will deliver for our children and our children's children into the future. the fact is that private ownership of British steel has driven it into the ground, and the Chinese have never had an interest in making steel in Britain. In fact, their only interest is to shut British steel making down, bring their steel over here, rebadge it as British steel, the finest steel in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem on paper like a Trojan horse business policy. Why would the Chinese want to make steel in Britain when it's 200 times more expensive than their own product? It simply seems bonkers. And so in your eye, government money, public ownership, that's the route forward.
Absolutely. This is our country. The Industrial Revolution started here in this country with coal and steel. And this crazy race to net zero. I mean, that's the next thing on my radar. Let's get British steel secured. Let's get steel making in Scunthorpe. And these people, I've been round those plants. They really care about their product. They live and breathe it. And it's why it's the best in the world.
And Simon, there's something else at stake here. And it's not just the future of industrial Britain, it's about having a productive and engaged workforce. And I remember the days when that was the norm in Britain, when we had shipbuilding, when we had steel making, when we had coal mines, when we were a proud exporter of things like lace from my home city of Nottingham. We outsource all of that around the world. We've seen Donald Trump these past few weeks, whatever you make of tariffs, saying we need to make things again. We need to build things again. Do you think that's what we should be doing in Britain?
Well, that's absolutely right, Martin. We've exported to over 140 countries in our 106-year history, and it's all made with British steel, British engineering and British workers. And, we're not exactly in the steel heart of the UK in Christchurch, but, we do our bit. And the engineering and the skill set in this country is phenomenal. And with the right investment, we will see massive returns for this country. But we need to get government behind this, get it secured, get net zero kicked into further down the road. Yes, we all want a cleaner, healthier environment, and I'm all for it, but not at the cost of our country. The manufacturing base has been shredded away with net zero.
Okay, Simon Boyd, straight from the heart, passionate stuff, the very best of British you, and thanks for all the work you do. That's the Managing Director of Reed Steel, Simon Boyd. Thanks for joining us today on GB News. Well, joining us now live from Scunthorpe is our reporter, Anna Riley. Anna, welcome back to the show. The Prime Minister there saying it's essential we secure the future of British steel in Scunthorpe. That'll be music to the ears of the locals you've been speaking to today.
It certainly is, Martin. I'm just outside British Steel here in Scunthorpe. I've had a couple of workers actually stop and talk to me. One of them said that he's going for 10 pints tonight because he feels very hopeful for the future of British Steel. And certainly I spoke to the trade union rep of Unite for British Steel earlier, Martin Foster. He said that this morning there was a real sense of sadness and concern about the future of the steelworks here in Scunthorpe, but he said after that announcement has been made that Parliament are meeting tomorrow, convening emergency legislation to try and keep the steelworks running. He says that there's a lot more happy atmosphere, that people are feeling more confident, and of course stressing the importance of steel for the nation as a whole. He told me that from the Scunthorpe Steelworks here, they provide 95% of the network for British Rail. Just so important. We know that the government's investing more in defence. It's huge for that, but it's also so huge for the people that work here. Scunthorpe's had the steelworks for 160 years. Steel is in the DNA of people that live here. People have worked in the town for generations here at this steelworks. We spoke to a worker earlier, just 20 years old. He'd been in the role for 3 months, concerned about his future, but feeling more hopeful about tomorrow. And I've also been out speaking to people in the town about what the steelworks mean to Scunthorpe, and this is what they told me.
Scunthorpe needs the steel industry. It's what holds the community together, and we're all family around there. We all try and look out for each other, you know what I mean? Without it, it'd become a ghost town, and we need it.
The only way they will know where Scunthorpe is when you mention the steelwork. And they will like, oh, yeah, steelwork, Scunthorpe, yeah, big place. And it employed a lot of people. So all this happening, imagine how many people lost their job. And some people work there all life. And now, with no other skills, if they lost this job, we're going to struggle, the families, the kids.
Well, I don't really know if they'll make a deal, because I don't think the government really cares much about the North.
Everything. If it goes, it becomes a ghost town. All the knock-on effect and everything. We've got to nationalise the steel industry. We've got nothing of our own in this country. No gas, coal, electricity, even our water's French-owned. And when the pickup comes, if we haven't got a steel industry, it's all going to go abroad, and everything's going to go abroad.
So people in this town are certainly going to be holding their breath tomorrow, and all eyes will be on Westminster to see what deal can be made to save British steel here in Scunthorpe.
And O'Reilly, 10 pints the steel workers going to drink tonight to celebrate. And, you know, some really heartfelt interviews there with locals in Scunny, because, of course, we all know how important it's the lifeblood steel of there, just like the coal mines were before, just like the shipbuilding was before. And they all went. Many see British steel as the last industry standing as part of what Britain's industrial heritage stands for. Anna Riley, excellent reporting. Thank you for joining us there from outside British Steel in Scunthorpe. Well, let's get back to the studio now for some reaction in Westminster. I'm joined by the Director of Research and Education at the Adam Smith Institute, Maxwell Marlowe. Maxwell, welcome to the show. What's your thoughts on is it a good idea or not to renationalise or nationalise British steel?
Well, let's step back from this for a moment here, Martin. Right. So when we initially privatised British Steel, as it was known, British Steel plc back in the 80s, it was costing about £3 million a day to the taxpayer. Now we're going to probably see that £700,000 cost being transferred back to the taxpayer once more. None of the inputs are British. That's coke, that's the flux, and that's also the iron ore. It's all imported from Australia, from Brazil. So we're already unreliant when it comes to our supply chain. So if we actually want to have what we call steel autarky, the ability to produce more steel, which I agree is significant for the UK, we need to cut energy costs. That means getting rid of net zero. It is insane, but also reopen the mines across the UK. And with the current legislation, the current drive towards net zero that's bankrupting this country, it's not going to happen. So that's why I'm very sceptical about renationalising steel, because it's a bad deal for taxpayers.
There's also a dichotomy in the fact that at the moment we spent 7.2 million quid on a shipment of coal from Japan. Maxwell, it used to be the definition of absurdity to sell coal to Newcastle. Now it's government policy.
I know. It's absolutely crazy, isn't it? I mean, that's, step back even more. Britain was the first country in the world to properly smelt steel. All over the UK, massive industrialists up and down the UK were, investing massive amounts to smelt steel in the UK, good British steel. It was literally the lifeblood of the Industrial Revolution and what made Britain a really powerful country worldwide. Since then, it's been non-stop deindustrialisation. It's unions, it's high energy costs, it's the hatred of, I think, of industry, whether that is from a climate perspective, whether that's a hatred of capitalism, who can really put their finger on it, but it is very, very concerning. Again, I'm very worried for the state of UK finances and the cost of taxpayers if we do take it back into public hands.
And yet, politically, we seem to have some degree of conformity. Nigel Farage on the same page, it seems, as Keir Starmer. And the Conservatives, even Ed Davey was saying earlier on, we should make this a key strategic industry. Maxwell, is it worth the cost to the taxpayer? Is it something more than just numbers? Is it about having an industry that's left? Is it worth financing that? And is it worth having our own steel to build the new houses, even theme parks in Bedford?
Well, who knows? But that's the thing, right? So when we look at where's this British steel going? So firstly, what do they make? So it's what we call long steel. It's rebar, it's different products that go into construction. We know the construction industry's been having a really hard time of it recently, what with house building and other types of investment. It's not really strategic steel as we'd call it. It doesn't go into our ships, or, our new fleet of submarines are not going to be built with British steel. A lot of that is imported actually from France and other allies in NATO. So, yes, I think it is important. We don't want to have, decapitalisation, as we call it in industry, but at the same time, I think it could be a really raw deal for taxpayers because they're just going to have to keep churning more and more money. That's, you and I and GB News viewers as taxpayers, GB News viewers and their taxes being filed in and essentially burned up the chimney just to satisfy Ed Miliband and net zero. So it's, again, worrying.
Super. Thanks for joining us in the studio today on this wonderful afternoon. That's Maxwell Marlowe, the Director of Research and Education at the Adam Smith Institute. Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure. Now, next, we're discussing minimum wages as Brexit Britain's is now 86% higher than the European Union average. And I'm telling you what, maybe that's why we're such a pull factor. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:26 on this glorious Friday afternoon with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, research from Facts4EU has found that Brexit Britain's £12.21 per hour minimum living wage is a whopping 86% higher than the average, guess where, in the European Union. Now, is our minimum wage meant to be a boon for British workers, also acting as a gigantic magnet and pulling people towards our country from around the entire world and also from within the European Union? Well, join me now to discuss this in the studio. is the Deputy Chair at Facts for EU, Ben Phillips. Ben, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have your company.
Absolutely.
Fascinating report. As ever, I'd expect no less from you. I think we've got a graphic on the screen we can pull up there to get viewers interested in, for starters, to show the top of the pops. Talk us through the minimum wage across the European continent and tell us where Britain stands in the pecking order.
Well, there we are. And can I, at the outset, Martin, pay tribute to Brexit Facts for EU, because they unearth reports, they research the data on issues that are vital to the national interest and which are repeatedly overlooked or ignored by the political and media establishment. So a big hand to Lee Evans and his team, and thank you very much for that. So there we are. As you see, Britain stands an honourable second in this table of other EU 27 nations. Topping it is Luxembourg at £13.35 per hour, and Britain stands a proud second at £12.21. That is better than all our principal competitors, Belgium, France, Spain, Germany, Ireland. The actual EU average, as you can see up there in blue, is £6.58. And they're down at the bottom. No surprise, perhaps, Hungary, Latvia and Bulgaria at £2.79. Is it any wonder that people are coming over here in droves from that part of Europe?
You know, Ben, it looks like a giant magnet. On the left-hand side of the screen there, those are the countries that people want to go towards. Let's face it, Luxembourg, who want to go there? Only joking. But the United Kingdom is at number 2. Obviously, we have the shared language, we have the English language, we have a huge amount of immigrants already here. So you add all that together, you get the perfect storm. Isn't it funny, though, Ben, how we're always told, the United Kingdom before Brexit had terrible workers' rights, it had no workers' conditions, and yet, I think you're right in telling me, Ben, there is no standardised minimum wage policy across the European Union. And is there any wonder? How on earth can you have that when they pay a paltry £2.70, £2.79 an hour in Bulgaria?
Absolutely. And people might say, well, Bulgaria's cost of living is much lower than the EU average. But we did a calculation. In Germany, for example, the cost of living, if you translate it, I think 2.3 times what it is in Bulgaria. And even if you factor that into the £2.79, there's still a huge differential. So it is an absolute nonsense. You're quite right, Martin. We were told for years and years by Remainer rejoiners that living and working in Britain would be akin to working in a Dickensian factory or a Siberian hellhole. And nothing could be further from the truth, both in terms of the rates of pay, as you rightly say. They've been raised again in the last budget, of course. Those over 21 earning £12.21 an hour, and for those 18 to 20-year-olds from £8.60 to £10 an hour. So we stand proud in that, and also in terms of the other benefits that come from working as well. UK statutory holiday entitlement, 28 days here. In Europe, it's only 20 days. And maternity leave in the UK, it's 52 weeks, a whole year. And in the EU, it's just 14.
So it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to work out that when you add all of this together, when you have a shopping list of destinations you perhaps choose to go towards if you're somebody from the European Union or indeed outside the European Union, when you add all of that together, Britain is an extremely attractive prospect for immigrants, and that might explain why we've got net 1 million coming legally and then all the rest coming over the channel in dinghies.
It is. It's a double-edged sword, as you rightly say. It's hugely important, and Britain can and should be proud of its employment rights and its rates of pay. But as you say, it acts as a huge magnet, not just to Southeast Europe, but also to the rest of the world as well. Immigration is a perennial and consistent problem that we've got. It is now at crisis levels, and who's to say that Angela Rayner's Employment Rights Bill is not going to amplify that even more?
Well, I think exactly right, and a dichotomy there, of course, Ben Phillips, as we saw before the Brexit referendum. If you increase the supply of cheap labour, you're more likely to keep that minimum wage down for longer because there'll be more people prepared to work for that lower rate. Does anybody actually win net in the end?
No, they don't. That's the trouble. We're on a doom loop at the moment of flat productivity, low innovation, and flatlining or even declining living standards.
And also it raises a lot of question marks over those countries at the bottom end of that spectrum there. They're all the ones that Tony Blair let in. I digress. Ben Phillips, excellent as ever, and thank you to you and your colleague Lee Evans. Always an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much. Now, plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show. But now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, here is your travel and traffic update. Don't forget to stay tuned.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Nick Arkell. Traffic is busy on the M11 northbound where there was a broken down vehicle, junction 7A through to 8. It's all open, but residual delays remain, and the M1 northbound is queuing with a collision on the hard shoulder, junction 25 to 26 near Nottingham. It's on the hard shoulder, but be careful passing that one. Also on the northbound M1, closer to Milton Keynes, junction 12 to 13. There's a broken down lorry, that one's still closing lane 1. Severe delays on the M11 northbound through Essex, junction 6. There's a collision. It's closing one lane out of the usual 2 with congestion from junction 5.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Safe travels home. There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including as Parliament is recalled on a Saturday to discuss the future of British Steel. I'll be joined by a Labour MP who says it's now time for Reform UK to put their money where their mouth is. But first, here's your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom, 5:33. The top story tonight, the Prime Minister says the government's move to take control of British Steel's Scunthorpe plant is about keeping all options open as it tries to secure the site's future. Speaking ahead of tomorrow's emergency debate in Parliament, Sir Keir Starmer said legislation will allow ministers to take control of the plant and make sure all viable options stay on the table. He said the decision was necessary now, with talks over the long-term future expected to carry on for some time. Pressed on whether the move is effectively nationalisation, though, he didn't give a clear yes or no, but said it was about acting now to protect jobs and production. He also didn't confirm how much the plan would cost or why similar actions weren't taken to save the Port Talbot steelworks. Well, leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, says he wants the government to classify the steel industry in the UK as a national strategic asset.
Well, I'm really worried about those steel jobs because of the tariffs that President Trump has imposed, which are really harsh. It's really hurting British Steel and British steel workers. And what Liberal Democrats are saying, the government should designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset. And what does that mean? That means we would make sure that whether it's our energy sector with our wind turbines, whether it's our the new leisure park in Bedfordshire, or whether it's any aspect of our industry, defence industry, for example, that they use British steel.
And just staying on the matter of steel for one moment, Unite's General Secretary Sharon Graham has in the last few minutes released a statement saying she is pleased that the government has listened to representations by the union Unite and other steel unions over the future of British steel, adding it is absolutely the right thing to do to begin the process of nationalisation. So that line just into us from Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham. In other news, Michael Gove is heading to the House of Lords, topping a list of politicians named in Rishi Sunak's resignation honours. The former cabinet minister, who served under 4 prime ministers, joins a wave of people rewarded. Former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and ex-Foreign Secretary James Cleverly among them, who have both received knighthoods. And peerages go to former Chief Whip Simon Hart and ex-Scottish Secretary Sir Alistair Jack. That's despite Jack's involvement in a row over betting on the election date, which he denies breached any rules. Well, let's check in on the markets. European stocks have wrapped up a turbulent week on a steady note, with today's trading ending broadly flat after days of global volatility, while London's FTSE 100 held firm, finishing up 0.64%, while Germany's DAX dipped slightly, down 0.27%. Across the Atlantic, US markets opened slightly lower today as investors continue to digest the fallout from Trump's escalating global tariffs. And that comes as China hit back with a 125% import tax on US goods after Trump raised some Chinese tariffs to 145%. Despite the market jitters and the US dollar hitting a 3-year low, though, Trump insists the tariff policy is doing really well and, he says, moving along quickly. And the UK could be in for its hottest day of the year so far today, with temperatures set to soar to 24 degrees in parts of the south and southeast. To claim the title, today needs to top the current high of 23.7 degrees. That was recorded in Hampshire earlier this month. But while the sun's out, so are the warnings. Fire crews are urging caution, with wildfire risks climbing fast after weeks of low rainfall. In Northern Ireland alone, more than 200 have broken out in recent days, many thought to have been started deliberately. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with a full roundup for the news at 6 o'clock. Next, let's take a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's how the markets have closed up for the day. The pound will buy you $1.3048 and 1.1520 euros. The price of gold at £2,459.54 per ounce. And a slight correction on the figures there on your screen for the FTSE 100. It has closed today at 7,964 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The great thing is that this is going to be the perfect summer to stay in the UK. A couple of reasons for that. The first one is, well, yeah, you can't do much about the weather, but what you can do is save an absolute fortune. I've been looking at, for instance, all the tourist attractions around Europe. The prices are going through the roof. You want to go and see some beautiful pictures in the Prado in Madrid, that's going to cost you over 30 quid. And yet, here in the UK, all our big cultural attractions are free. And furthermore, you will be doing the country a favour, because the best thing you can possibly do is spend money here, create jobs, pay taxes, and make things just a little bit better than they are now.
So, Joe, does that convince you to take a staycation this year?
Well, my staycation will be here in Tenerife, for sure. I want the guaranteed sunshine, and I want the cleaner air. And the cheap places to eat. I mean, Simon was talking about the costs, but in Tenerife, you go into the mountains and the hillside areas, you can still get a 3-course meal for under 20 euros, very good quality. There's arguments, obviously, for both sides, but I think for most people, it's just that guaranteed dose of sunshine that people are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to get away from that, Simon, isn't it? That we do want the weather.
Yeah, but we just got to recalibrate, honestly. And tell you what, there's going to be an awful lot of people who are going to be travelling to Tenerife, other places, particularly around the Mediterranean, this coming Easter, because they've literally been scorched over the past couple of years in July and in particular August. Very, very high temperatures. Brits have had enough of too much sunshine.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. The Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:41 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now let's return to the big breaking news story today, and that is the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, says that British Steel's future hangs in the balance as Parliament is being recalled for an emergency debate tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Let's speak now with the Labour MP for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, Melanie On. Ms On, you'll be in that debate, no doubt, tomorrow. The Prime Minister gave a statement a short while ago. Still doesn't seem particularly clear what the plan is. Lots of great sentiment about how important British Steel is, about how vital it is to Britain's future, but we don't know the plan yet. Do you know the plan?
The purpose of us going to Parliament tomorrow is to learn more detail about what the plan is, and I think that that's the right thing to do. When it comes to matters of national importance like this, the expectation is that members of Parliament, if it is deemed to be so important that we have to go back into Westminster, that we hear the news from the Prime Minister firsthand.
What would you like to see happen? The Prime Minister was specifically asked the question by a journalist today. Is this the first step towards full nationalisation of British Steel? Will it be a part measure? Because we found ourselves in the insane position today of spending £7 million on coal from Japan. 55,000 tonnes of stuff being shovelled into a Chinese-owned furnace just to keep it burning. That's not sustainable.
It's not, no. I mean, I think that we have got a plan for steel. That is something that the government took action on as soon as it came into power last year. And I think that that has been welcome to try and ensure the future of steel and recognise the importance of steel for this country and try and make it work in the best interest of this country. I don't think that tomorrow we will hear a statement that says this is about nationalisation of the Scunthorpe's plant, but I do think that it will be about making sure that it's on a secure footing, that it's in the best possible shape to find a long-term commercial solution. What we have had across northern Lincolnshire for years now is a cycle of uncertainty around the steelworks, which has meant that when it comes to the staff who work there, that they have not felt confident that this is going to be a career that they can rely on for a number of years, something that in the past, it's been generations of people who have gone to work at the steelworks, and that isn't the case. And so what I would like to see is that there is that commitment to ensuring that we have got a strong British steel presence in the region, and that we continue to produce the kind of steel that we know that we will need. So it needs to tie up with the industrial strategy for the country as well.
About a week ago, Melanie On, our political editor Chris Hope asked Sir Keir Starmer, after Labour had cut foreign aid, if he was channeling his inner Nigel Farage. Are you doing the same thing again today? Nationalising British Steel, of course, is a reform headline policy.
Yeah, I mean, I take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt, if you don't mind me having a bit of hesitation around that. You know, Nigel Farage wants to so apparently nationalise the steel industry at the same time as he wants to privatise the NHS. You know, he says that he is a son of Thatcher. Thatcher, of course, who privatised these industries in the first place. So I take it with a pinch of salt. And really tomorrow, the proof will be in the pudding, or the eating of the pudding for reform. They've been making a lot of loud noise about this. I know that Reform are very good at saying what they think people want to hear at any given point in time. And tomorrow they will have the opportunity to back the Labour government's plans to protect British steel. You know, this is going to be steel made in Britain and backed by Labour.
OK, I contacted Richard Tice for comment on this before you just came on, and I've got that now. And he says, yes, of course, reform will be in chamber, but the plan needs to go further. So we will be tabling amendments to fully nationalise British Steel now and not later.
So they'll be trying to find a way to not support the measures that will protect jobs and livelihoods in northern Lincolnshire tomorrow. Those amendments will be deliberately wrecking amendments, things that government presumably will not be in a position to commit to tomorrow. That doesn't mean that government wouldn't be working towards that at some point in the future. But I suspect that this is a little bit of parliamentary games that Reform will be playing to avoid voting for something tomorrow that actually the people of Scunthorpe and more widely across northern Lincolnshire who work at that site desperately need to have to make sure that they've got jobs to go to next week.
Yeah, I mean, we've just had a reporter, Anna Riley, outside the Scunthorpe steel plant, British Steel, and we spoke to a British steel worker. They're delighted at the prospect of full nationalisation. The locals want this to be taken back into public ownership to secure their jobs. That's also what Reform UK seem to want. So I guess if the Labour Party want that too, there'll be no need for a wrecking amendment. We can all agree, perhaps, that renationalisation is the best thing for the industry and best thing for Britain.
But I think that this has got to be part of the plan for steel for the country. You know, what are we going to use it for? What are the contracts that are in place? As with any industry, you end up with a bit of a chicken and egg situation. You can have the industry, but unless you've got the pipeline and the orders to make it worthwhile, actually what you could be buying is or nationalising is something that is going to end up being mothballed. So we have to make sure that there is a really strong plan in place to make the right decisions. And what we will see tomorrow is a plan that is not about full nationalisation. That's not what it's about tomorrow, but it is about securing that site. And it's making the necessary interventions that will protect jobs, will protect livelihoods, not just for Scunthorpe, but more widely across the whole of northern Lincolnshire, so that we can get that plan in place and we can see exactly the role that British Steel has to play in the industrial strategy for this country going forward.
Great stuff. Thank you very, very much for your time. Mel Leon, the Labour MP for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, and good luck with that debate tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on GB News. Now, coming next, the BBC has spent over £500,000 of licence payers' money restoring a controversial statue made by a paedophile. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello again, here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Well, the fine sunny weather couldn't last forever, and as we go into this weekend, we are going to see a bit of a change with some showery rain and also a bit more cloud around as well. Currently though, for the time being, still heavily under the influence of high pressure across much of the country. There is a front towards the far north that's bringing a bit more cloud, some outbreaks of rain that will continue as we go overnight, but most places ending the day and going through the night with largely clear skies, a very settled picture. As a result, there could be a few pockets of mist and fog, particularly across some parts of eastern England. And with clear skies, we are going to see temperatures taking a little bit of a dip. Perhaps not quite as chilly as some recent nights, but nonetheless, a touch of frost is quite possible in some prone rural spots. So then we start the day tomorrow on quite a bright note across many areas. Still some cloud across the far north of Scotland, Shetland in particular, having a bit of a wet start to the day. Otherwise, a generally fine story to start off with. A bit more cloud though, starting to push into western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, and towards the southwest of England. Here there's going to be some cloud and some showery rain feeding in as we go through the morning. Elsewhere though, lots of bright sunny weather. However, as we go through the day, the showery rain in the southwest is going to become a bit more widespread. Some of these showers could be a little bit on the heavy side as they push across parts of, well, initially southwest England and Wales, but then later on feeding into other parts of the UK as well. Further east is actually staying dry, plenty of sunshine on offer here, and temperatures are similarly warm to recent days, low 20s, but further west with the showery rain pushing in, we are going to see our temperatures dipping. Later on, like I said, we do see more showery rain feeding its way in. Eastern parts are staying dry for now, but overnight, most places likely to see a bit of wet weather at times. Sunday's not looking like a total washout, but definitely cloudier than of late, and a few showers around. More changeable weather to come next week. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 9 minutes to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, the BBC has spent more than £500,000 restoring a controversial statue created by a paedophile. Well, the BBC have doubled down, claiming it draws a line between the actions of the artists and the status of these artworks. Well, I'm joined now by the former BBC journalist Danny Kelly. Danny, how does it make you feel that the BBC has spent £500,000 of taxpayers' money restoring this very controversial statue?
It's like a custard pie in the face of the licence fee payer, Martin, because I read a BBC article and the BBC themselves have said that they didn't want to use their buildings and contents insurance. They didn't want to claim on their insurance. So they left the £529,000 bill to be picked up by the licence fee payer. And as you can see, Martin, I'll tell you what else is scandalous, Martin. The vandalism, right, the gouges out of the cement and concrete. How on earth would the BBC charge £529,000 to repair that, Martin? You and me could have done it in a weekend with a bucket of wet cement. £530,000 and licence fee payers cash. Do you know, Martin, these new developments springing up all around the country, builders can build a 3-storey, 3-bed detached townhouse for 250 grand. How did that get signed off? £500,000, Martin. It's absolutely scandalous. The statue needs to be expunged from BBC HQ. It was all the rage to topple statues 3 or 4 years ago with Black Lives Matter. That thing needs to be removed. Just ask the victims, the survivors of the Savile case as well, Martin. They're aghast by this. The BBC have lost complete touch with the licence fee payer. And I remind you, mate, £529,000 to fill in some holes on cement and then encase it in a glass tomb. 529 grand, really? And they didn't use their insurance?
Yeah, it's worth pointing that out again, Danica. It's an excellent point. They had buildings insurance, which could have covered the cost of that. They chose not to go down that route, and instead they billed it to the licence payers. And now it's like a shrine. It brings more prominence to it. A lot of people think this is completely out of order. Danny Kelly, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Speaking total common sense. Monday, over you go, and have a fantastic weekend. I wonder what people at home think about that. You know, that's a statue that's created by a paedophile. The artist was alleged to have abused his own daughter. It's been there since 1933. It was vandalised by protesters. I believe actually there is a full-time protester still there. Now look at it, more prominence, fully restored, and at your expense. Thank you very much to the BBC. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show today. I'll be back at 3 p.m. on Monday. Have a fantastic weekend. But up next, of course, is Jubes & Co. tonight, hosted by the wonderful Miriam Cates. Miriam, what's on your menu?
Good evening. Thank you, Martin. Well, we've got a packed show coming up tonight. We'll have the latest on that Parliament recall for MPs coming back tomorrow, Saturday, to debate the potential renationalisation of British Steel following the goings-on in Scunthorpe. That all feeds into the arguments about Trump's tariffs. Can there be any future for British Steel? Well, that's all coming up in 6 o'clock. Please keep watching. We'll see you there. Here's your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Whilst we are going to have a largely clear night tonight, we are going to see a bit of a change in our weather as we go through this weekend. That's because the high pressure that's been firmly in control of our weather through recent days does start to drift away towards the east, but for the time being it is still mostly dry. The exception being across the far north of Scotland, where there's a front lingering here bringing some cloud and a bit of rain. Elsewhere, lots of clear skies, and under these clear skies a few pockets of mist and fog, particularly towards the east, and again we could see temperatures dropping a fair bit. Perhaps not quite as chilly as some recent nights, but nonetheless a touch of frost is possible in some prone rural spots. So a fresh start to tomorrow morning, but also a bright sunny one for many places, the exception being, again, the far north of Scotland, Shetland, seeing some rain first thing. Otherwise, though, across much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, a good deal of bright, sunny weather to start the day, and it's a similar story across much of England and Wales. However, towards the southwest, here we're quite quickly going to see some cloud and some showery rain feeding its way in. Now, these showers are going to push their way northeastwards as we go through the day. Initially across just really Devon and Cornwall and the southwestern tip of Wales, but they are going to become more widespread as we head into the afternoon. Some of these showers as well could be a little bit on the heavy side, particularly across parts of Wales and the southwest. Elsewhere, further north and east, a lot of dry and sunny weather and temperatures, well, still in the low 20s, so feeling pretty warm indeed, but fresh